Good evening, and thank you for returning to Mega Corazón. This is part 2 of today's marathon poetry reading from here in San Antonio, Texas. We're live from the URBAN-15's studios. This morning we had a fantastic response from both the live audience and the online audience to the 10 poets who presented their works. This evening we have 13 poetry readings, and we'll be going from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. Our first poet tonight will be Godman Tafoya. She is masterminded the origins and was the spiritual foundation of Mega Corazón when she was the poet laureate of San Antonio 6 years ago already, guys. And since then, we have had a monumental surge of energy and creativity in the community because we know we have something that no other city has, and that's Mega Corazón. And that's who we are. That's who we are as a spirit, and that's who we are as a living poetic organism. So, Godman Tafoya will be here tonight. We do have musical artists as well, Juan Tejeda and Armando Tejeda. We have some amazing performance by Vocab, which is kind of our hip-hop, blues poet of the community. And we have, again, 13 artists tonight. So thank you very much. Let's make contact. You can get in touch with us through the hiddenhistories.tv site or through urban15.org. So, Carmen, please.
Hello, buenas tardes, and welcome to Mega Corazón. I'm so honored to be here together with some of my favorite poets from this wonderful community, and I'm especially happy that people from all parts of the world can join in on us via these great live streaming facilities at Urban-15. I want to start tonight with a poem that's called It Was the Women. And it's dedicated to Nadine Labaki. If that name sounds a little bit familiar to you and you watch the Academy Awards, she was one of the nominees for one of her films. But this poem was inspired by a film of hers that I think is called Where Do We Go Now? And it's about a little tiny village in a country where war has just broken out between the Muslims and the Christians. And they live in a tiny community, half Muslim and half Catholic, in which the neighbors were neighbors, and they cared about each other, and they helped each other out. They were fond of their neighbors, and some of them were beginning to have crushes on their neighbors. And I won't spoil the movie for you, but I will share with you the poem that I dedicate to Nadine Labaki called It Was the Women. It was the women who hid the body, swallowed their own tears, strangled their sobs in a smile, and said, "Good day," to the men. It was the women who took a hammer to the back of their only TV, left crystal dust shining faintly from their dustpan and their worn, thin kitchen floor, as they made sure the national news could not be seen by their men. It was the women who understood that hate is stronger than friendship in a small village, half Muslim and half Catholic, and that news of war ignites the blood hunger in those who only years later might realize what they have done. So in their final desperation to not see neighbor turn into foe, blood that splattered everywhere else fall here too on their laughter-filled streets, and hate stained vision with permanent ends, the women plotted, prayed to their separate gods, and woke to a vision in utero implanted, hard birthed and given light again. A day where Catholic grandmother donned the Muslim veil, and Muslim wife lit candles to the Virgin by their bed. Husbands, sons, and grandsons roared with offense, and hungry learned to eat. the breakfast meal, both Lenten and halal. I'm going to share some new stuff, some poems that go into some of my experiences these last few years, which I don't recommend to anybody, but if we're lucky enough, we live long enough to outlive some of the people that mean a lot to us. And these last 5 years were filled with a great deal of loss and a great deal of sadness, illness, hospitalization, funerals for numerous family members, my 3 closest team members, I call them, including my husband. And these next 2 poems are poems that I wrote him. Those of you who know me know that I always mix a little Spanish in someplace, or if I'm writing in Spanish, I mix a little English in, because we live in a place where Spanish and English get along. They're part of our history. We are bicultural. We are binational. We are bilingual. And so this poem is entitled, What Enamorados 37 Años Means. And Enamorados 37 Años, the poem's going to tell you what it means, but it means in love for 37 years. What Enamorados 37 Años means is that the years peel back everything. Timidity, identity, fears, dreams, finally memories. And as the limbs of the mind drop off, and the legs no longer go where you intend them to go, even then, inside, intimacy grows deeper. Love blooms pure. Your hand shivering to mine, as if our bodies were skin to skin, even when separated by the walls or the illness or the very veil of death. And this other one was written about a year later, at 38 years, and it's called For You I'll Fly. The earth below us shifts, and the joints of houses ache with hairline fractures that grow into fault lines on the walls. The motors burn out, first the fan and then the garbage disposal on my way out the door to job or bank or nursing home. The only 2 burners still lighting weakly on the stovetop flicker at me. Things fall apart. Sometimes people do too, as crisis after crisis beats us down. Deaths and close to deaths, loss and deeper loss. You can no longer swallow or pronounce. You reach a hand of bones to lift my hand to your lips. Your eyes catch my eyes with kindness. Carry the message as softly as you can against this harsh sky. The song you heard playing before I did, Por ti volaré, I recognize. You sang 1,000,000 times before this disease. I didn't know the English title was Time to Say Goodbye. You pull a shining smile out of this stiff Parkinson's mask. Your gift surprise to me, all wrapped in starlight, and gently release me. And I'd like to close with a poem that's about some stuff going on right now. Very painful stuff that we've all been trying to grapple with for the last few years. It's a journey, and it's called A Lamp Held High. U.S., Day 1. Give me you're tired, you're poor. So many miles we walked, Mama. So many countries we passed with nothing more to fill our stomachs than our fear and a dream of somewhere. You told me a lady with a lamp would protect us, make us free. That's what kept us still able to lift each foot when the water had run out, when the nights and days of walking had burnt through our shoes, when our tongues were swollen with thirst. Maybe that was the lady who left that plastic gallon of water in the middle of nowhere for us to find. U.S., Day 5. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I don't know how many days it's been now since we got here. I was crying all night and sleeping all day, and I couldn't tell which was which because the guards left the lights on so they could watch us. I don't know how many days it's been since they took her away. But the other children tell stories between their sobs that make me shudder. I try to soothe the younger ones, but some won't even talk to anyone and only check the face to see if it's their mother, then start to cry when it's not. I don't speak English, but there's a word I hear here over and over. It burns in my ear. Illegals, illegals, illegals. They almost spit it through their teeth. It smells sour off their breath and steamy in my hands as if I'd touched something burning hot that scalded me and won't stop burning, steaming, scalding. How can we shed this word like an old scab and heal? How can we find fresh air inside this chicken cage filled with crying children? And is my mother in another chicken cage, but larger, filled with other mothers crying? U.S., 6 months later, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Why, Mama, did we ever have to leave our house and our 3 chickens, leave my little friend who played football every day with me and even gave me half his taco if I had none? Why did we have to go? I know you said there was no food. I know you said they killed my papi. I know you said you wanted me to live, that we would find libertad. But is this libertad? Losing everything I had, even you? Did the lady with the lamp go away or quit? She does not live here anymore? Did we cross the wrong border? Perhaps this is the wrong country. Does she need to raise that lamp higher so she can find us where we are? Mama, they say they sent you far away, and they never come to check on me again here in this new town where no one even knows how to pronounce my name. U.S., undated. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. Build the wall, I hear them say on TV now. Build the wall, some of them shout with anger on their face. Build the wall. That's what he grumbled when he grabbed my mom away like a piece of basura crumpled for their trash. What wall, I wonder? Is it the wall you build in your heart to lock the rest of us out? The wall between being human and being lo que no vale, without value, without light, the way you see me now? 3 years later, U.S., I lift my lamp beside the golden door. When they pulled me away from her, I was a child, so young, and even now the details of her face are fading into clouds of doubt. They told me to quit crying, to shut up. I asked when I could see my mom. Never, they laughed, never, and be glad for it. They put me in that cage of wire that I could not escape. Is that the wall they meant when they spit on Mama's face? Mama, I wonder, is that all that lady said? You sure there wasn't more? That lamp beside a golden door, give me your tired and your poor. Is that golden door only for people who have gold? I saw no lamps, only the lights on the jeeps with guns, the shining gold badge on the chest of the man who threw me in the cage, and the ceiling light above us, long and sneering, almost blue. The whispered words of the cleaning lady who smiled at me and wiped my tears and said, Ingratos, as long as their friends who own the prison make money from keeping you here, they'll keep you locked inside forever. Mijito, if you ever get out, come to my house. Todos saben dónde está. And I'll sneak you over to my sister's on the other side. Maybe she can make a call and find your family. No, I say, I have no family other than my mother, and that spitting man took her away. I am in school. The words are not so strange these days, but still I keep my silence. When we open books that show our freedom, I shut my lips. Why are you so quiet? They ask, smiling. But inside my head I shout, is liberty a lady with a lamp held high who promises to keep us free? Just as I had asked the cleaning lady, who only shed a tear and answered, No, mijito, no. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Emma Lazarus, 1883, inscribed on the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island.
Quintanilla is the current poet laureate of the city of San Antonio, and he has a very strong presentation next.
Hi, my name is Octavio Quintanilla. I'm the 2018-2020 San Antonio Poet Laureate, and I'm a professor at Our Lady of the Lake University, and I teach literature at the MA-MFA program. So I read some poems. Just think of the borderlands, think of South Texas. Some of the themes here are going to be about relationships between fathers and sons, border violence, also its beauty. So, and there's also some poems that have to do with love, I think. I mean, all poems are about love, I think. So the first poem is Love Poem with Two Fires. First I dream my teeth are falling off, and I try to push them back in place. Then I dream I take things out of my mouth, cotton for instance, or a woman's endless braid of hair. I see my future move ahead without me, and no one comes to explain what I'm ceasing to be. My best nights are when I dream you are a fire in the middle of the wilderness. I'm your favorite tree burning in that fire. Love of my life. How hard can it be to enter my bed as my mother? I'm a newborn, feed me. I'm the abandoned lamb, the weak hatchling, the branch broken in two to beat a spoiled child. I am all memory. Be a mother and coo me to sleep. Baby, talk into my heart's ear. Run your hand over my head. Tonight, you're not my lover. Tonight, I am not your husband. Tonight, I am your missing son. You, the milk at the corner of my mouth. I wrote this poem maybe like a year after my father's death, and it's called Poem Writing a Suicide Note. By the time you begin writing this poem, your father is dead. This time, it's for real. Unlike that poem you wrote in which you have him fall from a ladder, cracks his head, loses memory, but doesn't die. In another poem, he's a construction worker, South Texas sunlight hammering his back, dies in the end. For you, it was all pretend. Most of your adult life, you've been like a 5-year-old child, pretending patricide, documenting it in poems, all the while afraid to dirty your hands with true blood. Keep pretending to be 5 and offer your testicles to his inspection. How silly you feel in that memory. Such a tough guy now, knowing there was nothing shameful or perverse about it. Just a man making sure his son had the balls to rise against him if necessary. How much more pretending must you do? How small you are in that mortgage you'll never finish paying. The student loans you drag to bed every night. How much longer will you pretend the world does everything right and all you do in the world is wrong? If you could only believe one last time that missing someone can be infinite, can outlive you, pretend for your sake that maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Hope you're all having fun. Again, after my father's death, it was hard to write poetry about him until years later, so here's another one. It's called You Take a Picture of Your Father. You take a picture of your father with your new cell phone, the last one you'll take of him, thin and frail, looking like a praying mantis as he brings his hand to his mouth with a piece of bread. If he pretends to eat, it's to appease your hunger to see him eat, and not to appease what no longer gnaws his belly, no longer the hollow he knows. It's over, and you know it. Hours all you have now, after wasting years in silence, you in the same path as his to reach this moment where you hold up your heads like dim lamps and face each other. All light now, as you search in his eyes for closure, for anything that doesn't require words, a doorknob, perhaps, that opens the sky before you. So I'm going to end the reading by reading a couple of poems in Spanish. Dormir con hambre. Duérmete con hambre cada noche para que las estrellas puedan brillar como naranjas en la luz húmeda del sol. Con hambre para que el manto del cielo te traiga la mesa de tu madre, desbordándose con el trabajo de sus manos. Sopa de pollo y tortillas con manteca y sal. Con hambre para que los cinturones de cuero y percheros te recuerden a los moretones que a veces se dan por amor. Con hambre para que una vez más escuches esa voz eterna, fina e implacable, derramándose al suelo como polvo de ladrillo. It's another one. And it's in Spanish, but there's a figure in the poem. It's a dog. I like dogs. Por las noches me enveneno. Por las noches me enveneno con el pensamiento. Si estoy enamorado, me imagino a mi mujer desnuda o a punto de desnudarse con otro hombre. Él le lame el lunar que solo yo y su madre conocemos. Ella le cuenta de mí y él quiere saberlo todo. Quiere saber de mi posición favorita, de mis angustias, en dónde nací. Ella le cuenta del tiempo en el cual las cojas me atraían, las mujeres con una mano más pequeña que la otra, las viscas, la cicatriz en la cara. Es cierto, me gustaba la imperfección. Quitar una blusa y encontrar estrías, quitar un brasier y no encontrar una teta. De los prostíbulos salía enamorado. Me excitaba la amargura, los amores callejeros. Mi madre se preocupaba por mí. Estás muy flaco, me decía. Ella pensaba que estaba enfermo. Y yo, con llagas en los ojos por no poder dormir, hundiendo mi cuerpo en uno imaginario, envenenándome con el pensamiento, como lo hago esta noche, recordando a Cristo, el perro que tuve de niño y que una tarde salió de casa para jamás regresar. I read this longer poem, and I think might be the last one. Hueco que queda en el cuerpo cuando se va la luz. Imagino a mi padre muerto. Días después de enterrarlo, llega al pie de mi cama con el cuerpo de otro hombre. En la oscuridad no puedo verle la cara, pero sé que es él. Sé que es su mano la que toca mi mano, su aliento el que lame mis rodillas como ola salada. Quiero prender la luz, pero ¿para qué? ¿Para qué abrir los ojos? Me lo imagino vistiendo la piel del vecino que murió algunos meses antes que él. Me lo imagino con el bigote de su padre que nunca conoció en persona. Nunca fuimos al mar, aun cuando el mar estaba siempre a nuestro alcance. Siempre le dolían las muelas, las bolsas de los pantalones siempre repletas de desgracias. Cada noche se quitaba el rostro y lo dejaba descansar en la mesa de la cocina. Creo que tenía sus razones, pero para no ir al mar. Allí de pie en el agua, creemos que el tiempo pasa, pero el tiempo nunca pasa. Esta noche vino a ofrecerme respuestas. Presiento que me quiere decir algo, confesarme, finalmente, lo que se le quedó afuera del ataúd. Le pido que abra la boca, confiesa, le digo. Ya estás aquí con los dedos encendidos. Dibuja en el aire el trapo negro con el que te limpié la sangre de la cara. Cuéntame de tu nueva patria. Dime por qué has cruzado la frontera de los vivos. ¿A qué le temes? Y has de saber que los nombres de los olvidados están hechos de viento. De viento estás hecho y llegas desde el mar a tocarnos la puerta, a recordarnos, a abrirnos la ventana que dejamos casualmente desatrancada. I just want to thank the City of San Antonio, the Texas Commission on the Arts, and the San Antonio Area Foundation for supporting the production of Mega Corazón. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. And the city appreciates it. Viva Poesía.
Hello, happy National Poetry Month to everybody. My name is Marisol Cortez, and I'm a writer here in San Antonio. I'm really excited to be here and get this opportunity to share some of my work with the world. So I'd like to thank URBAN-15 for producing this very powerful event for so many years running now. And since this is a live broadcast from here in San Antonio to the world, I wanted to select some of my work that focuses on different aspects of this place. And I thought I would start with a poem of orientation, which is just called What is Here? Yesterday, it felt as though just the turning of the year, December to January, was enough, that it could be spring already, almost. But today, the sky feels like crying a cold rain. We steal an hour and walk along the river holding hands. The city has drained it to dredge. We see little fish swimming upstream past exhaustion. We see gasoline, shiny fish swimming sideways lackadaisically, and the occasional neon koi, muscular as forearm. We see turtles, large and small, their size an advantage over fish in weathering the unaccustomed state of an unnatural river gone back to its natural flow, just a trickle. They wedge against rocks, noses aired, letting water course and break over untroubled shells. We see turtles whose names escape us both, but whose soft, flat shells and tipped beaks bring it right to tongue's edge. We see speckled suckers resting at mud's bottom, dead or at ease. We see unruffled ducks standing one-legged. We see maintenance trucks driving along the exposed roadway of river bottom. We see glasses frames and mud when you sidle up to the edge and make as if to jump. We see an unknown whiteness flowing from the open mouth of a hotel's drainage outflow, painting an oily passage down water like contrails from jets in flight. When we walked here the other day, just a little bit north, just a little upriver, I told you what my father said about the wild terror of the riverbanks in the 1950s, about the snakes that would scare him out of swimming, about the raft left tied up for anyone to untie and use. But this is not a nostalgic poem. This is not a poem of lamentation or declension. This is a poem about seeing what is here. This is a poem about what it is that remains to be seen. A crowd of fish collected by thin current and cluttering up the grate where, now exposed at the locks, where the wily city has figured out how to lift whole boatfuls of tourists so that they rise and fall along Hugman's constructed channel like magic, as though the river's flow ran even and unbroken. One of the themes that I seem to kind of return to again and again in a lot of my writing, whether it's poetry or prose or creative nonfiction, is this interface, which I think came out of that last poem, between city and nature, or the urban and the ecological, and especially the little things, the creatures that thrive at that interface and that remind us of and surprise us into thinking about our relationship to place. And this poem kind of speaks to that interface again. It comes out of that vein, and it's called Edge Effects. Have you ever noticed that the houses most close to the highway, the holdouts, the ones that refuse to sell, the ones held closest to bosom of urban industrial, the ones in perpetual umbra of interstate might in fact be so close, it's as though they're remote? An odd edge effect of living inside the scar, so near, so close, it's like the highway skirted them. After all, just left them in the dust unsupervised. Just look at all the dense winding green of their yards running over with chickens or children. Just smell the jasmine or wisteria blowing through wind tunnel of 35 South as from above it whistles, as I've said before, like the waves trapped in miniature within the enameled pink ear of the conch. And this is another poem that kind of starts out being about urban nature, but ends up kind of thinking about the nature of language itself and the nature of poetry. And it's all inspired by what I would say is the official bird of San Antonio, which is the grackle, much maligned, but totally awesome. And just I have to share this. Somebody mentioned to me the other day that her mom always told her that grackles were engineered in a lab at Texas A&M. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But this poem is called About a Grackle. On Drexel, grackles crackle like intercoms scratching their itchy throats like radio static, like what? Like walkie-talkie, like scrape of register transaction. But that's not quite it, doesn't capture it. The analogy, not quite accurate, not right. Analogy itself is like standing amidst fissure between the thing itself and the world, and the word straining for closure. And so simile then must be a neurotransmitter between synapses, poetry, the crossing of cognitive Atlantic, a translation of sense into symbol, a photography, an orthography, or an ornithology, perhaps. In any case, it's a lexicon insufficient, asymptotic, approaching infinity, but never quite getting there. Just as all language, all symbol is rhythm at bottom, I've thought recently I remember standing on Drexel astride bicycle straining to tell you about a grackle. All language is sense, is syllable, is sibilant, is assonant, is lullaby, is song fundamentally at bottom, is sound without content, pitter-patter of pattern, somatic, pre-symbol, where it comes from, the word that wells up from the world. Grackles. And just to shift in tone a little bit, but still a poem about San Antonio very much, and in fact, maybe the story of San Antonio, unfortunately. But this next poem is from a chapbook called I Call on the Earth. It's the title poem from that chapbook. And that chapbook is a series of poems that I wrote while I was writing alongside some writing that I was doing with some other folks to document what happened at Mission Trails Mobile Home Community, which is actually just down the road from where we are today. And the report was attempting to really kind of figure out where people went when they were removed from their homes, when the city in 2014 voted to rezone that park so that developers could put luxury apartments on that site. So the report was trying to make that erasure visible by interviewing a lot of the families that were removed. But as I was doing more kind of sociological documentation of that, I found that there would be absences, there would be stories that couldn't be, they could not be recovered, either because people had moved and not left their contact information behind, or in some cases they had died. They had died after they were displaced, or they were so traumatized they couldn't speak about what had happened. And so in those absences and those silences, I often found I would write a poem, because that was the way that story, that was the language for those absences or those erasures. And so this is the title poem from that series. It's called I Call on the Earth. I remember when they wanted to construct the highway. They said they'd make good on lost acreage of wetlands by engineering new acreage. They knew how, they said. They would even build more than what they took. True, not a highway here, but a highway anywhere there are wetlands. Not a river here, true, but rivers everywhere. And so this is the story of any highway, any river. Anywhere, they said, what was lost could be restored, and what moved, resettled. Anywhere, they said, it would be better than before. But those Kansas wetlands, they weren't just endangered ecology. They were also the site where children were buried, children ripped from land and language and family, hair shorn, their ceremonies forbidden. Children who fled the genocide of conversion into the bosom of the swamps, the river bottoms, where later the city built its sewage plant. The university up above on the hill, the Indian school down below in the bottoms, and the highway shredding through it. In Kansas, Dan Wildcat had quoted Vine Deloria once at a public hearing. Sacred places, he said, are those where great violence once has happened. That's a paraphrase, but then, as now, there was a non-understanding. Reconstruct the wetlands, the sacred? Really, when loss of the sacred is actually unquantifiable, incommensurable, absolute. When loss, sacred or ordinary, is precisely that which can never be compensated, reconstructed, or rebuilt. The loss of a leg to illness or war, the loss of a child, one single, unique possible future. The loss of extinction, the mother orca from a dwindling pod who pushes her dead child more than a fortnight by forehead, the death of the last speaker of Wichita or Clallam, a cosmos of names snuffed out. I'll say it again, loss is radically exterior to all logics of calculation, all tallies of equivalence and compensation. Earlier today, I walked up to the outer fence surrounding Mission Trails. I looked down at the river below. I saw a couple of kids bike by. I saw a dude hanging out under the bridge. I saw that the river was bigger and more ancient than our struggle, our suffering. I saw it had survived despite violence. And Siddhartha's ancient cry rose up inside me. I call on the earth to bear witness. This next poem remembers my grandfather, Ramiro G. Cortez, who died in 2014, and it's called Águila. Fierce eagle, Águila, I wake up early, the morning of your burial, seized with these words that no one dare write. You were born in 22, the eldest of 10, son of a barber, son of a drinker, son of a man who beat your mother, Antonia, and forced you to be father early, on the streets with newspapers and shoe shines, the softness beaten out of you. That is the reality of colonial city, of West Side segregation that you lived. Child of Lanier High, where you met my grandmother. Quiet, solemn, says Mrs. Sanchez, bringing yearbook to show me una abuela in a sea of brown faces. Slavic Mexican, Mexican Jew. Ashamed to be both, ashamed to be born outside the circle of matrimonial sacrament, calling herself Spanish instead. But that was after you dropped out and then returned to school. I saw the video UT did when they filmed you talking about your growing up times, your war experience for their oral history of Mexican veteranos from World War II. One of the times you cried was when you recounted a friend who came to your door insisting you go back to school. Rudy Cortez was his name, no relation. You had dropped out to follow your parents, your sisters, up to Arkansas for the cotton crop. Your father had pulled the girls out of school, and how could you stay in school without helping too? You cried then, remembering how your friend, 6 months later when malaria sent you all packing home back to San Anto, came to your door to persuade you. You had to be persuaded to return and graduate, but you did. You did, and you cried to think of it, and so did I. The other time you cried was when you told your story of war. We were so naive, you say, remembering. They draped your coffin with American flag, but you hadn't wanted to go to war. You signed up not wanting to be drafted, sent anywhere. You thought by signing up on your own you could stay here in San Antonio. Of course, said the recruiter, before shipping you off to Colorado, New York, Germany, to sit in the tail of a plane and shoot. When you heard that pilots were paid more, survived more than tail gunners, you and your friend sprang to sign up, to train, and then test. To this day, you feel they flunked you not because you were not coordinated enough, like they said, but because of who you were, where you came from. Race the unspoken in-between lines, race what assigns who steers at the front, who shoots at the back, who lives, who dies without speaking its name, without having to. But you survived it, and you cried, remembering the cost of survival. Remembering Hiroshima, how they dropped the bomb on the eve of being shipped out again, this time to Pacific Theater. We're gonna die, you told your friend. This time, we won't make it back. And you knelt down, made a bargain with God. Please, if you let me live, I will live my life upright. But they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the nick of time, remembering, knowing the enormity of what saved you, the outline of bodies vaporized against a wall, which allowed you to go home to San Antonio, which allowed you to marry grandma and raise 14 kids on postman's wages. 14 kids, híjole, what were you thinking? Remembering what it cost to survive, you cried, and so did I. Not understanding fully until then on whose shoulders I stood, the great historical vehicle of Mexicana mobility, post-war catching all of us up in its indifferent trawl. Bittersweet upswing out of that west side barrio. But you hadn't wanted to go to war. Never forget that. So you led an upright life, so upright it could hurt, like when my sister at 12 sat crying silently before you when you commented on her weight. Like when you wrote me lamenting my daughter's unwed conception. Like when you grabbed the arm of my cousin at 4 or 5 years old and herded her, her sister, her pregnant mother out the door of your house on discovering they'd entered unannounced to use the phone. The car had broken down in the heat of summer, and they'd knocked, but you hadn't heard. And now the fearsome grip of your hand on my cousin's tiny arm as you threw them out is what she remembers most about you. Did you know that? And then there was the day I went to your house to interview you for West Side History Project, and you knew where to cut a mixed girl, right where it hurt the most. I don't know why you're doing this, you said. I can remember when you didn't even want to think of yourself as Mexican. I stood up to you. Oh yeah? When was that? Because there's never been a time when I have not thought of myself as Mexican. But after I left your house, I sat in the car shaking, ashamed as my grandmother in who I was, in between, neither nor, not even in my own family. Is that really how you saw me? Is that really what you thought? Did you really not know me to the point you would think I saw myself as not a part of you, not coming from you, where you came from, even as I came to you, to love and honor your struggle, your suffering, your survival, and my own? No le hace. When I went to visit you again, this time in the hospital, right after this last stroke that would eventually kill you, but before your vocal cords collapsed, before the feeding tube inserted when you could no longer swallow without choking, before you could no longer get out of bed or move, before we could touch you only with gloves because of the staff from the hospital, your body slowly shriveling, freezing, immobile until all that was left was the spark and barb of your mind, ever sharp, wagging a silent finger in warning when they tried to get you to sign the will. Someone else's will, not your own. You'd bargained with God for your life, and they'd have to pry it from your hands cold and dead. Pero before all of that, you were surprised to see me when I came. Mijita, I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think so either. I'd been angry for your words to me and to my father and my sister and my cousin and all of us wounded by your severity without speaking back because you were the elder. The eldest. You were the one who'd had to survive, whose survival made us all possible. But I came, and none of it mattered. I held your hand and you asked me about my illegitimate daughter, and if I was still riding my bike like I did that one time to your house, astonishing you, and if I was still interviewing Westsiders. I like your blouse, you said, with knowing. I had bought it just a few days before. Huipil from a Mexican vendor like the embroidered dresses my grandmother would wear. And will you go back to Kansas? You wanted to know. Though I've been home going on 2 years now. Just making sure. No. No more Kansas, I tell you. San Antonio is my home. And I thought about closing with that poem, which honors an ancestor, but I thought it would be better to close instead with a poem for a descendant. So I wrote this for my baby boy, Wolfgang Isidro, who was born 8 weeks ago today. And a friend of mine pointed out that he was born on the eve of Chinese New Year. It's the year of the pig, I think. So this poem is called Chinese New Year's Eve. In the morning of the eve of Chinese New Year, when I wasn't sure if my water had broken or if contractions would pick up or stall, I peered out the living room window outside from where I lay on the couch, hearing ruckus of birds outside. And there I saw 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 dusty little sparrows or wrens bathing in the bird bath, feathers puffed out like pine cones. And I knew then, somehow, you would arrive that day from far away, light traveling across the galaxy, from the origins of time and space, to enter the atmosphere, this world, our eyes. You emerged to several days of cloud cover, overcast and drizzly, followed by the grayest cold. Then, after the 7th day, we woke up to the gift of sun. And when we went outside, we saw buds on the citrus and mountain laurel, and we knew that in those 8 gray days of waiting, something that teetered after birth about a seasonal fulcrum had now tipped at last. And something that had flickered in our lives like flame you study with your mind, something liminal, shimmering in the air between dimensions like holodeck transmission, had finally appeared into the arms of this world of solid forms. Thank you.
Ikatlen yaski. Amitlan itenyotilio, tlacuitlapan, tlalipan. Kenim kichua no yolotzin. Asemotopali, tiolaleminis, inquaponis tlalipan. Ti nescaotitiu chochime, ti nescaoticu cuicame. ¿Con qué de irme? Nada dejaré en pos de mí sobre la tierra. ¿Cómo ha de actuar mi corazón? ¿Acaso en vano venimos a vivir, a brotar aquí en la tierra? Dejemos al menos flores, dejemos al menos cantos. With what shall I go? Shall I leave nothing in my place here on this earth? How should my heart act? Did we come to live in vain, to grow here on this earth? We leave at least flowers. We leave at least songs. Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is mi primo hermano Armando Tejeda here on my left, and I am Juan Tejeda. I'm glad to be here again at Mega Corazón. I like to start a lot of my presentations with that poem, which is over 500 years old, by the famous poet king of the Texcocos, who were allied with the Mexica Azteca. The poet king was Netzahualcoyotl, composed that poem. And it talks to the importance of our poetry for the Nahuatl-speaking people and the Mexica Azteca. Insochirincuicat was their phrase for poetry, and Insochirincuicat, as the poem says at the end, is flowers and songs. So there's a direct link from our native ancestors to the present with words and music and poetry. And we want to explore this link a little bit, as we've been doing all our lives. Music, of course, a lot of times the songs have lyrics, and basically it's poetry, right? Poetry put to music. And of course, coming from our native ancestors, not just the Mexica Aztecas, but the native ancestors from here, from this land, from Texas, from Somisec, as the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe calls them here. We have a big oral tradition also in our teachings and our education. Our beliefs and our stories were told through flowers and songs, through poetry, through music, through the oral tradition. And then there's a direct line from our native ancestors through the Spanish colonization period, and they brought their ballads over from Europe, and then it turned into something else here in Texas, here in these borderlands. We then created our own distinctive New World corrido tradition. And corrido is a ballad. A corrido is a song that tells a story, right? The corrido tradition has been very important here for our people. Dr. Americo Paredes, one of our foremost Chicano scholars, wrote the book on the corrido tradition here in Texas, and said that the corrido century began right about 1830s to the 1930s, with the advent of the coming of the Anglo settlers into this land, right? This is native land, and then of course the Spanish took it over, and then the Mexicans won their independence from Spain, then Mexicans took over this land, and then the Texans came in, the Texians, and took over this land from the Mexicans, and then the United States came in, and Texas became a state of the United States, and they went to war against the United States, won the war in 1848. So now we have Mexicans within the United States. or as we then referred to ourselves later on, and this term became more popular, the Chicano people, being the Mexicano or the Mexican people within the United States. We are Chicanos. We've lived through this 4 colonizations, and we've developed distinctive forms of artistic and cultural and poetic expressions. The corrido tradition is one very important. So today we're going to play 2 corridos that we recorded on our new C, Raíz Chicanex, Juan y Armando Tejeda. Just came out late this last year. These 2 corridos are 2 corridos that my father wrote, Francisco Mariano Tejeda, when he was drafted into the army here in 1941. The first corrido, the first part, is called El Corrido del Servicio Militar, Part 1, Camp Bowie, 1941. And then after the interview, we're going to do the second part, which is El Corrido del Servicio Militar, Part 2, World War II, 1945. But we're going to start with the first one, and we're going to do it in the traditional Tejano conjunto style, the early conjunto music style with just button accordion and bajo sexto. And you can see how the Chicano experience of being Mexicans within the United States, indigenous Mexican people within the United States, we have all of these different influences. Of course, we borrowed the button accordion from the German settlers that came in, the Europeans, and the waltzes and the polkas, and we adopted it and created a new ensemble that we know as the conjunto ensemble with button accordion and the 12-string bass rhythm bajo sexto guitar as the principal companion instrument. And this is in waltz time. The important things about corrido is not the music per se, it's the story. It's the story that it tells. And this is my father's story from his military service, and then the second part in World War II. El Corrido del Servicio Militar, Part 1, Camp Bowie, 1941.
El día 30 de enero y me quisiera acordar, salimos de San Antonio al registro general. Unos andaban muy tristes, otros echando canción. Después de mediodía nos pusieron la inyección. De San Antonio salimos como a las 9 sería, y para las 6 de la tarde estábamos de infantería. Que se ha casado ni se vaya a registrar, porque deja a su mujer y no la vuelve a mirar. Yo les digo a mis amigos, los que tengan sus papeles, le den vuelo al hilacha, no se crean de las mujeres. Y adiós mi prietita linda, yo me despido de ti. Ya me voy para Luisiana y algún día vendré por ti. Se va de soldado a cumplir con su deber. Abandonan sus hogares y también a su querer. Ese arroyo del indio que tenemos que cruzar, los cruzamos en la noche, silencio y sin fumar. Y Frank le dice a Bella, limpia bien la carabina. No pasa la inspección, nos ponen en la cocina. Y un amigo me decía, amigo, ¿qué es lo que pasa? Que el sargento nos hablaba para darnos platos y tazas. Día del mes que recibimos el pago, nos hormigueaban los labios por irnos a echar un trago. El Army también fastidia, ya nos tienen hasta las astas. Estamos en el campo, no más en las puras pastas. La vida de los soldados es una vida terrible, porque siempre están alertas y nunca pueden ser libres. Y adiós todos mis amigos, porque ahora sí ya me voy. Aquí termina el corrido de ese mental Bowie.
Thank you. Thank you. El corrido del servicio militar, part 1, Camp Bowie, 1941, by my father, Francisco Mariano Tejeda.
I'm going to intrude here for a second. Juan, why don't you grab a stool over there and bring it over here? Juan and I have a little conversation tonight as part of our Hidden Histories. That was excellent, man.
Are we going to use this mic or are we going to go
Yeah,
with
we'll
that?
just sit this on this one
Okay.
and make it happen here. Little real-time action. Have a few notes to myself. You know, it's that time of
You're close and I'm not.
bring yourself in, big boy.
You don't need this wire here.
No, we decided to go with voice mix.
All right.
Are we rolling real time, John? Part of the magic of live production is the mystery of when you're really on camera and really on microphone and not. I want to welcome everybody who's been here today via the internet and those of you live in the stage. We've had a wonderful time. Basically about 18 poets from San Antonio are being projected out to the world. We have a unique form of poetry in this city that comes from the merging of so many nomadic, migratory peoples that have come to this river valley. It's just an amazing 10,000 years of history. And I find that through the music and poetry and visual arts of our community, we really are starting to understand the DNA which makes us San Antonio. And we have been pursuing a project here at Urban 15 called Hidden Histories. And John, can we run the bumper on Hidden Histories just for a second and I can present that? Now, Hidden Histories began as an outgrowth of the tricentennial, and we decided that we would celebrate the most recent 300 years as a city, but actually 10,000 years is a long time for people to live in this community. And part of our tradition of Hidden Histories has been to ask the community to present photographs, videos, Super 8, 8mm, just things that they have found about San Antonio. And tonight's hidden photo, our mystery photo that we have found, is one that was given to us by the Huizar family. And this is a family that were here in San Antonio, and when the friars came and made the first missions, the family was taken in to the compound. And Mr. Huizar is very famous for designing the rose window of San Antonio. And the Huizar family has given me this photograph. It is a 1922 picture of Mission San Jose. And if you look very closely, there is no roof on the building. That is all modern. What was here at the time this photograph was taken was an abandoned structure, just the walls. And this is a picture taken by the Tobin Mapping Company in 1922. If you notice, there are commercial streets running all over the property and little farmhouses and workshops. A taller of wood making was in the center of what is now the National Park. But this was a thriving community where buildings come and go, people come and go, roads come and go. And it's not until the 1930s with the WPA that we actually start seeing this concept of trying to restore the missions to some almost imaginary point of history. So that was our found photo of the show. The other thing we're going to do tonight is I want to spend a little time with Juan, because the context of the corrido it's often taken as a musical form only. It's taken as a thing that we do at the Conjunto Festival or in the little bars on the west side. But I have been thinking about the corrido, Juan, in a very different way. Young men go to war whether they want to or not. They are inducted, they are drafted. And that has been human history for thousands and thousands of years. And I was thinking back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are 800 BC. And these are stories of young men who go to war. They come back and they write epic poems to give the history, because there's not a written language that everybody has. So I found out that there are 15,000 lines in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and people actually memorized them and could recite them. That's something.
That's, music helps people to remember a little melody.
So we should assume that the Iliad and the Odyssey had a melody.
Yeah.
That's the only way they could have remembered it.
Yeah.
And then there's another one called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is from Babylon. That's 600 BC. And it was a very old song, but what they found is that someone actually in cuneiform put it on clay tablets, but like 400 or 500 years after the event occurs. So that meant it stayed in poetic song form all those years.
Until it was finally written down, moved into the written form instead of from the oral tradition.
From the oral tradition.
Yeah.
And finally, there's the other song I was thinking of was, they call it the Song of Roland. And this is when Charlemagne tries to invade Spain. And he's retreating from Spain when the rear guard gets ambushed, and this young man named Roland with a horn sends the signal that, please continue the journey, you know, we're going to save you. And this is a song that was in 778 AD. And then it doesn't get written down till like 1200, the 1200. And again, it must have been a song, because how would people have remembered it? Yeah. And so I started thinking about the song and the whole idea of young men going to war. We have All Quiet on the Western Front, The Red Badge of Courage, all of those kind of books that came out in the novel form. But the song form is what you do. And I started thinking about your dad's work in terms of the young men going to war, whether they wanted to or not, because they were drafted.
Yeah.
And the story of passing inspection and all those kind of things, those are the simple things in the soldier world. But they're the things which created discipline and strength. And anyway, I've talked too much about it, but I want you to tell me something about this epic song that you're 26 verses, you said? It is
both of the corridos, and to make a parallel to what you're talking about, moving from the oral tradition to the written tradition. My father's corrido and corridos, the two corridos, he had them only in his mind for all of these years. When he went off to war in 1941, he was drafted, and I guess he began writing the corridos then, El Servicio Militar, Camp Bowie, where he did training before he went off to Africa and Italy, where he was wounded. And both of our fathers were in the Second World War. So he had these 26 verses in his head. And 30 years later, when I was a student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I came back to San Antonio and did an oral history on my grandmother and on my father. And for the first time, I wrote down the 26 verses to these two corridos that my father only had in his memory for all these years. And occasionally, over the years, those 30 years, occasionally he would perform the corridos. He'd take out the guitar, or my tío Rogelio Mando's father would have the bajo sexto, and they'd be at a party, a house party or something in the backyard, and he'd sing sometimes those two corridos, but he didn't sing them all together that much, I guess. And my father was a quiet man. He was a noble man, a respectful man. He wasn't very boisterous or anything, so he didn't talk too much about the war as many men are wont to do. And they saw terrible things over there and had to kill people, and he himself was wounded, and the shell that wounded him killed many of his fellow Army friends from the 36th Division when they were in Italy, and busted up his leg, and he was paralyzed from his left leg. I mean, he could still move it. He had to wear a brace from the knee down. He didn't want the doctors to cut it off because they wanted to cut off his leg. He didn't let them. And he was stabbed at another time on his leg by a German that he said that he ended up killing him. So terrible things that happen in war. And he was paralyzed and came back and worked all his life regardless, even with his brace, and danced and partied, and he loved music, and he loved conjunto music and the accordion. I was telling you before that it's interesting that while he was wounded and a lot of his friends were killed with that shell, he didn't write about his own personal experience in the corrido. In the second one, when he was at war or being wounded, he talked in general about the men that died and how terrible war is, and then the Armistice Day and coming back. but that he brought within his heart and his soul all of his friends that had died over there. But he didn't talk about his own wounds.
What I'm reading through, again, going through time in history about the epic, and which is what the corrido is. It's an epic. It's a ballad.
Epic ballad.
And it is as if the singer in the first person is the chronicler. He's basically reporting to as a survivor the others that passed. Oh. And we find that so much in that tradition of song, that it is very seldom about you. It's always about describing what the situation. And can you?
Right.
You're the Mega.
And that's the way that my father wrote these corridos. He puts himself in the corridos, and he says at the end of the one we just sang, y estos versos son compuestos por Frank M. Tejeda, and these verses were written by Frank M. Tejeda y escritos por los mentados de Longoria y Julio Vela, his friends that were in the platoon with him. So he says que estaban escritos por los mentados and written by Longoria and Julio Vela, but I never saw any copies of anything written, and if they did, they kept it or they lost it or whatever. But yes, he's narrating the story. He puts himself in, just like in the second corrido that you're going to hear. He talks about himself, at least that he wrote it, but then narrates what's happening and what happened to him and his friends
when he talks
at war.
Servicio militar, I mean, that is such a genre, military service. That's an enormous piece of literature, an enormous piece of history. Yeah. And it's not even about the individual, it's about service. And we find this so much in the chronicles of all of these histories, that these men are part of something greater than themselves. And part two, I think the part two carries that concept pretty deeply into conversation.
And that whole concept of we didn't cross the border crossed us. Our families on our father's side, Martinez Tejeda, we have documented here in La Villa del Carmen Church on the south side, Lozoya, Texas, now part of San Antonio, but deep south, chronicles our families, Martinez Tejeda, going back to the late 1600s. So we saw, we're native here, the native indigenous people to this area, and Yanaguana, of course, because of the rivers and the springs here that are important. And then, as I said, the Españoles, then Mexicanos, and then Mexicanos now in the United States. So our family has lived through those different colonization periods and adapted each time. My father called himself a Mexicano, and of course, he was born here in the United States in 1919, so he was a U.S. citizen. Of course, then in 1941, he was drafted and had to go to war, like many of the Mexicanos or Mexican Americans there, and like we've always served. And in that sense, this was his nation he was born into, and they were patriotic in that sense. And they went and died and were decorated. He received the Bronze Star with V for valor and the Purple Heart, and came back. And then, he lived right before the war, the period where there were signs in the restaurants and movie theaters, no Mexicans or dogs allowed. And yet they were drafted to go fight, in these foreign wars for this nation. And then upon returning, they were not accepted again into society and discriminated against, and a lot of racism, even in the service and when they came back afterwards also. So that was the beginning of really the whole sort of civil rights movement.
We had the honor in November to have Roberto Cifuentes here, the Hidden Histories, and he spoke about how the Vietnam War and his serious injuries and wounds helped develop his aesthetic, his understanding who we were as a people, but it created the art forms that he has pursued, and his artwork is very powerful. And I'm wondering, in terms of that generation, is there a corrido tradition that came out of the Vietnam War?
Yes.
And tell me,
There have been corridos written, I think, about every war that Mexicanos have been in, and I think we've been in every war that this country
country's
has
ever
ever
had.
had, including, I think I read some accounts when the Revolutionary War, going way back in 17,
something the other day,
1812,
that the Spanish government in South Texas
supported.
was selling cattle to take to the East Coast for the revolutionary troops of George Washington.
Yeah.
They were buying cows from Mexico to eat. And that's just amazing quartermaster story in there somewhere.
So
Anyway.
anytime there's anything important in history that happens to our people, rest assured that there's going to be a corrido written about it. Much like when Selena died, there was a lot of corridos. And of course, there were corridos about the Vietnam War and just regular songs also about Chicanos' participation in the Vietnam War. And right now, I can't think of the title of any one corrido or song, but
Yeah.
that's right. And we used to sing that one because my brother Frank, Tejeda, the former U.S. congressman and state senator and state rep, he was in Vietnam. And I remember we used to play this song that was called Ya Volví de Vietnam.
And whose tune was that?
I first heard it recorded, I don't know exactly who wrote it, but I first heard it recorded by Santiago Jimenez Jr., who was my first accordion teacher. And we played during that early period that Armando's brother, Robert Antone, played with his first conjunto band, Santiago Jimenez Jr.'s conjunto, and I was playing also drums with him after that. He recorded that song during that time in the 60s, in late 60s when Vietnam was going on.
One of the things that Roberto and I started as a result of our conversation was, what was the playlist as they went into combat during those years? And he has an amazing list of the songs of that period. We should continue this as both of us are historians and scholars as well as artists and musicians. So let us take that on as a project if we can do that, because we still have Vietnam, Desert Storm, Afghan, all of the places where our people have gone and into action.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've talked way too much. Let's hear part 2 of El Corrido.
All right.
De Servicio Militar.
Let's set up here.
Let's set up here real quickly. And we're going to do this real time. We don't have to go off camera or anything like that. Live TV, that's what we're doing. If you notice on screen right now is a little piece of promotional for Juan's press. They have some great poetry books that are available. Just go to that website and you'll see coloring books, calendars, poetry, short novels. So anyway, part 2.
Yes, and my wife Anissa Onofre and I have had Aztlán Libre Press for about 9-10 years. We've published 11 books. We're getting ready to publish our 12th book, which is The Canción, Cannibal Cabaret, and other songs by award-winning poet Amalia Leticia Ortiz, and that should be coming out in a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, so we're excited about that. Was the accordion coming out all right out there? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, so this is the second part of my father's 2 corridos that are included in our new CD. And this is El Corrido del Servicio Militar, Part 2, La Guerra o La Segunda Guerra Mundial, or World War II, 1945.
Voy a cantar un corrido que entre todo el que quiera a recordar de esos hombres de Longoria y Frank Tejeda. a Italia el día de la invasión. Murieron muchos soldados, hijos de nuestra nación. Es muy triste platicarles de este caso que ha pasado. A principiar la invasión, que los más hombres lloraron. Ay, qué muerte tan ingrata, esos pobres les tocó. No sabe dónde nace, pero dónde muere no. Que lloran sin compasión por sus hijos que murieron peleando por su nación. Las esposas que lloran con llanto desesperado, ver a todos sus hijos que huérfanos han quedado. Y Frank le dice a Longoria: anda, vete tú a esconder. Yo me voy para el frente, si al cabo ¿qué me han de hacer? Yo no le temo a las balas, andando con poca suerte. Para morir, camarada, donde quiera anda la muerte. Año de 1945 al contado, el día 8 de mayo, la marficia se ha firmado. Me despido, voy con rumbo a los estados, pero me llevo en el alma a todos los que quedaron. Estos versos son compuestos por Frank N. Tejeda y escritos por los mentados de Longoria y Julio Vela. Ya con esta me despido y acabo aquí de cantar. Aquí termina el corrido del servicio militar.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here again on behalf of my primo hermano Armando Tejeda, Juan Tejeda. Thank you for bringing us back one more time. And until next year. Oh.
Hello, good evening. This evening, my name is Frances Santos, and it's quite an honor to be here at the Mega Corazón. Such an important event in these times to express discord and joy and tension and progress and the future. With so many events that are transpiring at this moment, as we speak, I decided to choose a running theme on place, on what defines place, places, geographic places, places in the mind. And so the poems that I will be reading this evening will all be on place. And so my first poem is called, Do You Hear the Trains in Wyoming? Do you hear the trains in Wyoming, breaking the snow, wonderful? The same bellow you cried to once or twice in Texas? You are golden in the shade. Lavender beautiful at night. San Antonio is blue and gray. Quiet in the rain, I wondered how you in the van became restless with your stay. In San Antonio you colored blue and gray. And in 1 day, 2 days, packed up, secure. And then you were gone like that. The way love goes, just like that. You followed Wyoming, that space in your heart, pulling you away from those trains of the South. I've never been to Wyoming, but I had a very dear friend who left for Wyoming, and it seemed very rustic and cowboy and romantic. And so I'm going to bring us back to Main Avenue in San Antonio, which holds a very close place to my heart. Today's my grandmother's birthday, and so a lot of the place poems that I'm reading are also places that my grandmother shopped, walked, argued throughout her time here. On Main Avenue, from the delicatessen, silver hot boxes roll downtown into car exhaust, morning mist. On Main Avenue, there is a music store where pianos are on layaway. Nervous children in bow ties and ruffles play recitals. They play the sad songs of San Antonio. On Main Avenue, Mr. Ramirez grabs seed from a sack and tosses grain like slow motion, 1 step forward, 1 step back, sometimes a circle, swooning, fat pigeons on Main Avenue. Thank you. And now I'm going to take you home. Let's go home. Vámonos. Let's go to this house. Let's go to my house. This is the first house I bought on my own. And this poem is called This House Is Mine. This house is mine. Mine on a street with no sidewalk and crooked curbs. I closed on a hot summer day in July, the leaky roof, the leaky fridge, cable TV, computer station, out-of-tune piano, hardwood floors, built from a 1940s Sears catalog, Sears fence, Sears pipes, Sears doors. I painted my walls the colors of Nuevo Laredo, coral pink, tangerine, lime green popsicle flavors, Guatemalan textiles, yellows of roasted corn. Trash pickup is on Mondays and Thursdays. Mike, Rosie, and their 3 kids live across the street from me, and the streets have bad drainage. I read in a folk tale or a history book that the Chinese paint their doors red for good luck. I've painted aloe, agave, built a grotto dedicated to the Virgin Mary in honor of my grandmother, and I pick pecans from the yard, swarms and swarms of hard, brittle pecans. And I sit on my stoop in the back. This house is mine. Red door, aloe, agave, and all. you. It's very exciting when you own your first home. It's very exciting. It's a big event. It's a rite of passage. Another place I want to take you. I'm going to take you to a jazz club now. Another place, very popular with poets, jazz clubs. This is called Cries in the Night. Horns will come to a high-pitched tremble somewhere in E-flat, fade into the silence of sitting under a street lamp on a corner after cigarettes, after aspirins when lovers fight, lost in the pitch of brass sirens. But when summer turns north to autumn and that first cool of October catches the neck like a kind of blue mood, there is nothing but sketches of a lazy town. Jazz kisses you like only a bad woman could. And there is nothing, nothing, nothing between you and the beautiful blues. Oh, haven't read that in a while. Arizona. Arizona whispers, Acatillo blooms, a summer moon shrouded in an August desert monsoon. The drive down San Xavier Road catches flashes and patches of crucifixes, while San Francisco lays peaceful sleep, arms and legs and hearts safety pinned to his linen dress as Catholics kiss his feet. Arizona whispers Palo Verde shaded niches while the city girl crunches along gravel trails telling urban fairy tales of dancing devils and omen owls while lizards run under Arizona sun. This heat, this sky can make a person come undone. Light holy candles in the desert, make secret wishes while in this barren land. Arizona whispers from cactus towers in the 11th hour, and I can only devour the merciful sun, this precious cactus flower. And when we talk about places, I think we also talk about, and Jenny Brown, beautiful, beautiful poet, beautiful woman, had this wonderful theme in her time as poet laureate of Lost and Found. And here's a poem about the place, when you're in the place and you feel like you're found in the best way, in the good way. The mud-cracked map of this place was discovered long ago. This concrete metropolis crumbles when the storms come, storms that sweep away unsuspecting children in flood crossings, taking them to the forgiving heaven of Catholic grandmothers. Our boots slither in the murky mud, silence, the earth returns our ancient understanding of hands and feet with each step in the flaky creek. The rains come and we drift between sun, cloud, and candied sky. We are together in this wild rain. You have come home and finally found me. Another poem about my grandmother. Happy birthday, feliz cumpleaños, Big Mama. She wanted to be called Big Mama. If we called her anything else, we would be punished. So we did not do that. It was Big Mama. Happy birthday. The rosemary and sotol carry this want, have rooted desire around my house. I look for the secret behind a downtown sign with my father's name. I want to jump my dead grandmother's fence and count silver bruises like stars, or wade the restless tide. I have laughter behind me like mischief, like a last chance, like confession. But I believe in the pull of this star, this street, this precious scandal. Grandmother's. Another poem about my grandmother. So this was my triad sonnet. And so my grandfather bought a house for my grandmother upon their wedding at 1516 Cameron Street, Camarón. She called it Cameron, and it's still in the family, thank goodness. My cousin has the house now, so it's still part of the Lopez legacy. And my grandmother was also a master seamstress, tailor, dressmaker. She was a master everything, but this was one of the things of which she was a master. And so this is some of the things that she did in her home. Preparations in December, Cameron Street. Big Mama sews sequins to apron strings and pulling blue stars out of December sky. The kitchen stews a steaming hoghead. By pepper and spice, radio cries and sings. Formica counter, KCOR, brings DJ Ramble with Mexican lullabies. Folks ask for request while a young man pines for Veracruz, and now Santos seems far away from home. After the apron strings, she'll sew the dish towel, then the tablecloth, and then her Christmas quilt and cover. Holiday novelties, she makes her own designs, her own silver sequined fables. In a downtown home, she means to discover. Thank you. She could sew anything. This is going to take you to another place right now. This is sort of a place, the places that we have in our minds. You know, sometimes we get stuck in a place in our minds, and it's difficult to move out of that place. And so this is about my mother. As fabulous as my grandmother was, she was very strict with my mother, and very, but, you know, these things were done with great intentions. You don't want your children hurt, right? You don't want them to be around, you know, nefarious characters. But there was a lot of restrictions that came with safety, right, growing up on Cameron Street. So this poem is called She Was Not Allowed. This one's for my mother. My mother was not allowed to be a feminist, and somehow the paradigm stuck. She told me life was about risk, not luck. Taught me through stories, ballads, and books, told me no woman gets by on her looks. She taught me power through papers and poems, through language, gave me roots and home. Neruda telling me tonight I can write, and how good fences make good neighbors on cold New England nights. She gave me perfume from a dress that makes me so digress, and Joyce in the eternal state of saying yes, and yes, and yes. She gave me poetry. My mother gave me defense to play in my mind and make song out of silence. To make poems out of nothing, out of sky, out of sand, out of cumulus clouds slipping through your hands. My mother dreamed in Spanish songs and Aztec alphabets, Mexica memory of Indígena eyes with fierceness. She dreams of mythology, Moctezuma, Cortez, Ramses, Zeus, Ra, the phoenix and Icarus rising through constellations of ancient skies. She taught me how to pray to saints, Infant of Prague for all of your needs, St. Anthony when you can't find those blasted keys, San Juan de los Lagos if you need your miracle quick, Sacred Heart of Jesus and Guadalupe for the desperate and the sick. She taught me spices, concoctions of salty broths, how to make a winter soup when your soul is feeling lost, comino, onion, cilantro steaming when the heart is teeming with fear or distaste. Cinnamon tea, chocolate and sugar will take you to that safest, warmest place. She planted seeds in my heart. On the bookshelf in our house is where she gave me her start, with a feminine mystique that led to a Cinderella complex, making me wonder about my mother and myself, that sent me looking for Mr. Goodbar, and ultimately uncovering that the second sex is nothing more than a beauty myth with a fear of flying. And inside she was dying to see me travel and write, to throw a shawl over my shoulder late at night while I laughed with artists and scholars sharing cosmic truths and naked insights. My mother was not allowed to be a feminist, but somehow taught me to be free. And my grandmother, who wanted to travel with the symphony, was not allowed by her father. But Rather than binding my feet with shoes too small to walk out the door, rather than boxing me in categories of virgin daughter, daughter whore, she freed my mind with degrees of dignity, with papers and poems and saints and spices, gave me patience and faith to handle crisis. This is not to say I haven't made my mistakes, driven on the wrong side of the road when it's late, kissed the wrong person on a hot, blurry night. This is not to say I haven't had my share of fights. I have fallen and risen and wiped away tears. I have watched lines form on my face across years. I watched diabetes take her feet, her hair, her eyes, and I watched her limp softly into the urban sunrise. My mother was a woman kept by codes, but gave her daughter freedom of spirit and mind and heart to travel that open, endless road. I'm going to take you to the mythical world of New Spain and a little Shakespeare, just a little bit. Yeah. All you need is a little bit of Shakespeare, right? You don't need too much. It's too much, right? Ophelia resurrects and reinvents among the cypress trees in New Spain. The quiet rain that makes you sleep turned angry in the night. The wind took up its furious hand, called forth electric light. The rivers all turned crystal clear. The sky was yellow gold, while in the south your home awaits, where epic poems are told. For on that diamond riverbed your lover takes in sun. Her flaming hair floats on the bank. She waits for you to come. And both of you are told to swim to ice-cold bubbling springs, as tiny perch guide you beyond the underworld of dreams. Thank you. I'm a Chicana who loves American transcendentalism, and I go to a support group for that because I'm very conflicted by that love, that absolute love I have for American transcendentalism. Let's see here. I guess we're doing okay on time, or they would tell me something. I have a few new ones here somewhere. Let's see here. Found. Let's see. Sorry. Here's a place. I'm going to tell you about a place, another place here. The place is a closet. And the closet is where my father's suits hung for a while after he passed away. Right? You know, when your loved ones, they pass away, and sometimes their clothes are still. I can't see. 3 minutes? 2 minutes? Okay, sorry. Are still hanging. So these are two short. I'll end with these two short poems. So this one is about the place of a closet. My father's suits still hang in the copious closet. Solemn, calming grays, dark blues like the endless Gulf night skies. Expertly knotting his tie as a teen, understanding so young how he loved a suit. A crisp white shirt, a skinny tie with the half-Windsor knot. Elegant, but aggressive, always possessive. Just like the giant swan. These suits gave him wings. Even on the way to confession, he knew early on he would fly past his father's fields of cantaloupe, onions, and cotton. And then I'm going to end with leaving San Antonio. When I was younger, I had all these sort of like revenge fantasies, right? Of I'm gonna leave this town, and then the older I got, I'm like, God, this town's pretty cool. What do I want to leave for? God. So this is leaving San Antonio. I will leave San Antonio in the middle of the night. I will make the goodbye short, non-sentimental, no thoughts of this place ever as home, no thoughts of my mother or my grandmother, no, not one. But rather, it would be as if you called me from the wetlands of a South Texas mission to finally break the silence of your meditation and prayer, and you tell me, come to me, my love, come right now. And there is no other choice for me but to go, take my leave. Yes, leaving San Antonio, it will be just like that. Thank you.
Ready to go. Good evening, everybody. Mucho gusto en estar con ustedes on this first day of the month of poetry, even though it is April Fool's Day, which is kind of fun, you know. I'm going to read some poetry from a forthcoming anthology that's coming out later this year. It's a culmination of my poetic efforts from 50 years ago. I was a wee lad at the time, un mocoso chico, and I'm going to introduce each poem with a few autobiographical notes, and I'm going to start with one called "The Searchers," which I wrote for my dear departed friend Tomas Rivera, who many of you know from "Y no se lo tragó la tierra," and the earth did not swallow him. And I always felt that he represented the new onda, or the new wave of Chicano literature that came about in the early 70s. So here goes "The Searchers." Like the wandering Jew, a man without a country, our lifelong search for our ancient homeland, Aztlan, torn asunder, divided, destroyed, beyond recognition, dream turned nightmare, plucked out by the roots, thrown to the winds, yet signs of survival remain. Remnants here, artifacts there, hope that will someday burst all barriers, boundaries, borders. Aztlan, the Word made flesh. Thank you. This next one is about growing up in Texas. My father was Mexicano, Monterrey, Nuevo León. My mother was Tejana. And I grew up this sensitive little boy, Mexican boy, and his world was very strange to me. My world was stuck between the pages of a book, or books for that matter. And so I wrote this poem, and I've written it several times over and over again. And it changes, sometimes one stanza, sometimes a word. And I think it reflects where I am now. So I'd like to read this one for you. It's called Death in the Family. The death of my father wasn't the shock I expected, since I wished him dead before that day in Dallas in the late fall. Older now, I don't wish him dead, but alive, I couldn't understand and accept him for what he was, only for what he wasn't. This realization eases the pain I went through years ago. The pain I gave him was similar to the pain I felt. There was no love between us. In the dark macho world of sobbing men, lowering his casket, I shed no tears, full of resentment that filled me then. Now, my father's brothers tear at their sons. I was torn once before, and now I raise Cain, unable to wish the tears and suffering to decease and end the patriarchal reign from Spain. As I grow older, I have become the father, less of the child that I once knew, no longer knowing the part he played for keeps, and I for better or worse. Thank you. This next poem is from a more recent collection that came out a few years ago called La Causa. And it's called Great Cesar's Ghost. For those of you who grew up with comic books, you remember that was an expression in the Superman comics, you know, Great Caesar's Ghost. So this is not that one. In fact, it's really refers to Cesar Chavez. And I have a quote to begin with. And the quote is from Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. And she says, "I believed I was escaping from myself, but alas, I brought myself with me." This poem is in the voice of a young woman, but we're living in this gender fluid moment in time. And it well could be a young man or someone else. And I'd like to start with Great Cesar's Ghost. Salinas, California is east of Eden. In the land of Nod, my Bible teacher said. And Steinbeck wrote a novel by that name. I never held a protest sign, walked the picket line, or worked the fields. I was born ADD, Anno Domini Delano. My folks fought and struggled to give this land to us, the meek, inheritors of the earth, only to end betrayed by agribusiness greed. I learned of civil rights from the flatbed of a truck, heard Louis and the Lovers play, listened to Omar the Gypsy wax poetic. My first love was Mario. We made music and rhyme. He the music, I the words, our rich culture, our lives. Salinas is east of Eden, or so my teachers said. Steinbeck brought Dust Bowl migrants and a sad savior, Tom Joad. But then reality stepped in. Cesar organized the workers. The UFW bought and brought better pay. The land of Nod was a song. East of Eden was just a film. Dean never made it here alive. And Winkin, Blinkin, and Nod were just three men in a tub. When the age of punk began, I put Baez and Dylan aside. X was our Beatles, Los Plugs, and the Brat was our Stones. I belted out Johnny Hit and Run Pauline like Exene with a mariachi beat, backed with a twist and shout of Mario's funky surfer punk guitar. Great Cesar's Ghost was the name of our motley band of outsiders. Mario left for L.A. I followed, a bitch in heat, loved him more than me. He was my absurd vice. We lived in the burnt-out, riot-torn city of Lost Angels, cockroach street people, never landing a gig that paid the rent. I sang siren songs for change. Mario left me black and blue. S&M gave for pay, his habit for a tweak and a nod. El movimiento changed us. Growing up, I never knew I'd lose myself to find me exiled in the land of Odd. Thank you. I think I have time for two more. This one is dedicated for a wonderful story that I heard when I was a little kid. It was a story of an angel that appeared to a woman and told her that she was to be the mother of the Savior. And I heard a song, and that song reflected the story in a different way. So I'm going to sing a little bit of it, and I'm going to recite some of it. It's called Procol Harum, a whiter shade of pale version. And so it was related, as the angel told his tale. Mary had been concentrating on her embroidery too long. And just as she had put her task down, a hunky archangel with his sweaty haloed brow appeared. "My name is Gabriel," he announced too sweetly. At first, she feared he was threatening, then made her uptight, but he was tenser than she, silently saying her daily grace. Mary instead put on a brave face. "A wedding or a funeral, Mary?" her mother would ask. And so the Virgin told her tale. Her face had burst, just ghostly, turned a whiter shade of pale. Joseph sprang from the seed of Jesse. He was born repressed. Now, upon hearing his beloved was PC, he was depressed. "It's our family honor, such shame," his mother would taunt. There was a sea between he and Mary. He had to cross it. Maybe then the gloom would leave this nervous groom. The angel kept toying with his faded armor-plated breast, waiting. His radiant face showed no sign of compromise. "Oh, well, let it be," Joseph said impatiently. He said, "There is no reason. The truth is plain to see. Wouldn't let her be a Vestal virgin of 16 who was leaving with Angel for the coast. Their cheeky cherub sits a cheek epiphany. The famous family entertains Los Three. Through the sunning, shining star above the stable, made the shepherds and others suspect the wise men had carefully calculated Halley's comet was due that year. Now all the tears had turned to cheer. Nevertheless, will this family receive respect in Arab spring next year? Baby skipped the light fandango, did cartwheels for encore. The Magi called out for more. It was past baby's bedtime. My migraine was humming harder as the spirit flew away. And when they called for another, they had gone away. So it was related, as Joseph told his tale, that her face had burst just ghostly, turned a whiter shade of pale. Thank you. I believe that's my 15 minutes. Am I correct? Thank you so much.
Again, I've said this over and over today. We have been really blessed by some incredible talent, incredible intelligence, and Mega Corazón, big hearts to everybody. You know, this has been so wonderful. We have had a long day. It's 18 poets in 7 hours, and some of the people have done the morning sessions and the afternoon sessions. We have another poet coming right now. John Phillip, are we ready to go? Let's roll. Also, a quick shout out here. San Antonio Area Foundation, Texas Commission on the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts, City of San Antonio, and the Film Commission of San Antonio for helping us do Hidden Histories and Mega Corazón. Friends of Urban 15 in there in the middle of it all. Whom? Yeah, I did. The City of San Antonio. And so thank you very, very much. John Phillip, Santos is be our next poet. He's always mysterious. I hear his boots arriving. Clippity-clop, clippity-clop. In the great meanwhile, we'll do a quick promo. Urban 15 will be doing Mega Corazón next year. Yeah. So it's very important that you get emails to us, events@urban15.org. Let us know ways that we can make this easier for you to put it in your hand. Our whole concept is a poet in the hand is worth two in the book. You know, okay. Okay, John Phillip is here.
A treatise on memory. The shadow of anything will fall directly away from the sun in precise measure of its form. the moon and the earth, thieves of each other's precious solar radiance, exactly mirror their gibbous and crescent phases, their cast shadows passing like veils across each other's face. This remains a part of the ordinary ratio of shadows in our home in La Zona. Forestalling any unforeseen interruption, every movement of these celestial bodies has been plotted from farthest thence to the edge of fathomable evermore, and everything that casts a shadow will have a shadow cast upon it. And everything that passes into a shadow will eventually emerge from that shadow. But what are the laws that govern the shadows cast across memory? Can distant memory, darkened by long spells of forgetting, ever return to light? Must it now be so? Whatever the Jovian cycle, whatever the vast periodicity, yet it was once told how the Creator himself begat forgetfulness from within the womb of memory. An old poet of how Zeus once sang for 9 nights with Mnemosyne, goddess of memory, protector of Eleuthera's hills, and how later in Pieria she bore to him 9 like-minded daughters who would bring the world forgetfulness of evil, rest from pain. And above all, Calliope, muse of history, who soothed all of the greatest lords so divinely that merely speaking her name would cause them to ejaculate. And thus all memory gradually disappeared into the ecstasy of history. Life comes in a spark. Molecules take shape, enabled by some hidden codex deep within to create mirror copies of themselves. Everything crawls out of the mud and walks out across the endless earth and later trespasses into the heavens. For millions of years, the human body changed its forms as easily as a transfiguring flame, changing its size and shape as swiftly as refracting light crisscrossing through the clear, perfect planes of a prism. We began to dream. The scales of men and women also changed, with the ratio of greater weight of male to female nearly evolving to equality. A male Australopithecus was 1.5 times heavier than a female. Later, we became equal in size. All borders are abominations in the eyes of our ancestors. Every frontera, a diabolical illusion. Then we remembered where we were. We discovered the phases of the calendar, the seasons of ice, planting, harvest, and repair. Then the dolmens, pyramids, temples, cathedrals, mosques, and flying ships. Worlds are imagined and worlds are created, then destroyed over and over again. How could such a story become so forgotten, so hidden, passing so everlastingly into dark ink shadow? This forgetting is our tender consolation, for if we carried all memory, we would only remember forever. Where would anyone find the beginning of the story that the Iberians brought to Mexico and sought to transplant there so deeply that it might take root and continue its true final unfolding? We will never restore the great story, never return to the place of beginning so that we might approach the full meaning of all that has unfolded and continues to do so. Everywhere you look, within every recess of antiquity, there is another still more hoary antiquity hidden away, further multiplying the sources of the simple story we have inherited. For this there is no consolation, no completion except for history's unpronounceable providence. There is only ever outward, and every ghost is pompous, though they may dissimulate a certain gauzy wistfulness, powerful grief, vague forgetting. Remember, no solid ground anywhere for anyone now. Only ghosts know what comes after, hence their irrepressible pomposity. A natural history of insurgent Chicano media. What matters in Unforgettable Twilight is that it progresses incrementally, breathed out in measures so slow it becomes infinitely roiling wind, or if it is illuminated in cobalt and amber, then it only barely perceptibly hems the rising crowns of these irreproducible clouds, undeniable, ineffable, inchoate, till my unusually officious mother, halfway ensouled already by her death braid, should gaze upon this wonder and ask, what does that mean? Only one of us allowed himself to dance. Only one embraced aleatory reckonings upon the body, every transmuting turn and movement disappearing into a telling darkness we recognize because it reflects us. It alone returns our image to the frame of the smoking mirror. The stands of cactus burned autumnal sugar in clouds of our unceasing hunger, countless ways to become disenchanted from the project of the Republic. Cousin, you have a cousin who could be my cousin too if he hadn't been killed before we could ever meet. Primo, always seek to fathom the depths of your days so that they may become ever more unfathomable. Our enemies shall not know our own lands until they have fattened them with their own gore. Without proper funeral equipment, any old rope will do. Pack your bag tonight. Bring only what your heart must dwell upon endlessly, the way the moon, la luna de alba eterna, attends to every precious wave. In rolling arcs of diurnal rounds, a kiss upon the neck, ascending in the count of days toward open sky, only that which you will not forget, the way you fall asleep counting prayers, slow descent of shimmering feathers, song of conch shell drift down into a field of glowing nopales. If your bag is not packed yet, will it ever be? The emissaries are at our door. Snakefoot has left us a map. Feather Lip says this trip will take 1,000 years, never to return, never, ever to return. That road ran farther back than maps or memories allowed. Once it was the road where all roads began, shadowing the Gulf Coast with palms, banana, bougainvillea, then slowly climbing towards Sierra, past jacalas decked with tamarindo, panales de miel y vanilla. Pearl-colored smoke came up from the burning fields in plumes that spun every gust into spirals, churning and dissolving into the jungle's burnished light. Work songs of the farmers glittered with tentacles of fire. When no road can return us to its beginning, that player hangs by his neck, dangling from the dusty rafters of our treasured jacal de herencia. And this was the promised land, this the terreno vouchsafed to us by some god or other, decked in pyrite, gold, glitter, eyeshadow, diamantine breastplate, a proper god, we thought, till los pinches rinches strung us up in numbers, glimmering in eternity like nueces catfish on trot lines, pulled out of clear water at dawn, gifts of our own reckoning, depending on whoever you might love. Walk a lament without words. Let the body rotate slowly through the houses of blood, breath, bone, and song. Waking to bugles when La Guardia came out to raise the colors. The streets still full of sleep's haze. That viejo, already of 90 years, in his denim jacket, turning over dirt on his third wife's grave. Sinking from heavy rains, he dreamed with us, praying all along, machete, vanilla, honey and ash. Totonaco, Olmeca, Mexica, Chichimeca, Tzompantepec, Xichotimalco, Ixhuacán, Ayahualulco, Jalapa, Zempoala, Cholula, rotating, hanging in the breeze, turning slowly toward the next eclipse. Sin ropa, sin carne o hueso, sin abuelos, sin abuelas, sin paz o guerra, solamente el camino, solamente Huron King Blues. Ni una cama, ni tierra de hojas, solamente susurros blancos del norte, cayendo como las cenizas de los montones de libros pintados que nos quemaron los hermanos desconocidos, ellos que habíamos esperado un milenio de años y más. Roll back the sky now, roll it back on a scroll stapled with cactus spines, tightened around the pole star, every swath dotted with squash pollen and pine tar. All our parole glistening in a wash of opal sea foam. That's how far back we had to go to find the way again. Where we left all the counted stones, where blood runs clear as honeysuckle sap, mingled with our breath, night, air, turning burgundy forever. It was a poignant century, said the old priest. A century when we thought we were doing good, when we were really doing very bad. Sky remembers everything, each pulse of fire, flame tracks of first songs, first contrition of the void, giving forth, inexhaustible, leavening the quiet with indelible chaos. When we hear the song again, it's an old radio show. It's as scratchy as if it had traveled across time in a meteor of smoky quartz. When we embrace once more, an open canyon shall yawn beneath us, languid, cool air swirling, twirling us westward into the oldest night. I'm going to close with the latest Santos poet, with her completely intuitive obsession with paths. Paths and caminos. Francesca de la Luz Santos.
The path. Walk the wrong path and you shall receive. Walk the wrong path and it is hard to leave. But somewhere inside there is a rope of hope. You climb out, and now, if you're ready, you take the right route. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. With homage to Mark Hollis. He was the soundtrack tonight, Mark Hollis.
Ah, wow, John Philippe, beautiful. It's good to be back here, and Mega Corazón, that's a big one, so yeah, I like that. I wrote a piece, before that, I'd just like to say, if you go to YouTube and look up Eduardo C. Garza, you find a bunch of videos that I've been working with Texas Film Productions, Janelle Sturbance and I have put together. Eduardo C. Garza on YouTube, there are about 9 of them. 2 of them are documentaries, one by Laura Varela about Vietnam veterans, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and the other by Ricardo Ainsley from UT in Austin. He put one together, and what Janelle did was put some videos about Vietnam, and it's an NPR interview that I was invited to participate with David Martin Davies. So I'd like to do a piece that was never published about 300 years. It's kind of laughable. We've been here 30,000 years as a raza. So I just said, okay, 300 years. Está bueno. We'll give them that. I'm going to raise this up a little bit. See if you can still see me behind this thing. Chaparrón. The rains come and the rains go, and time trickles down from the high points to the streams, and the river flows. 300 years plus 3,000 plus 30,000 years and more, and still the rains come and the river flows. The way of the river, with its depths and shallows, rapids and eddies, switchbacks and quicksand. Long before any revolutions, the populace survived, venerating the deceased as they transition from life to death, ceremony, ritual, laws, rules, and rulers. All the colors of humanity giving directions on how to get there. Eventual babies of the Alamo, rigid, rugged, beleaguered, and full of resistance, copying nature, stolen memories, diaries lost in an illiterate oral history, fixed translations from so many tongues wagging, blessing the dead, blessing the animas, blessing the animals as we prepare them for the slaughter, for the grill, the feast. The rains come and go, and time continues to trickle down from the high points to the streams, and the river flows. The Buddhists ask the question, where will you be in 300 years? I ask the question, where were you 300 years ago when manifest destiny put asunder the native people who strive on? They tread on the shards of broken treaties and the bones of their ancestors. Nayanawana. I'm just going to do some poems now. I don't title them. They title themselves, I guess, maybe later. A lot of these are first drafts. If it was easy, more people would try it. More souls would have the intention to explore the possibilities involving creating a new earth. One with no pollution, no war, no poverty, no hungry citizens. Corazones, courageous few that even know what to do to change things in that direction. Posturing politicians that lie about everything, everything. Waves of grass turning brown and dry, empty phrases float above the crowd of constituents and find no place to land. The proletariat, blissfully blind to what is true, continue to use and abuse detergents, soaps, oils, gasoline. True story, it's the fracking truth. Lines of men, women, and children await the darkest hour, hungry for the truth, rally round the Tower of Babel, swaying in its shadow. A prayer winds its way up the spiral staircase and ignites the tinder of one's belief, and we all fall down, down. A new earth is born. Which brings us to madness. Madness, I say. Oh, my God. I'll just say that word, God. Thank you, Creator. You can crush the madness. Crushing madness takes time and patience. Rules must be broken and beliefs must be put aside. Crushing madness takes time, a lot of time and patience, lots of patience and understanding that some rules cannot be broken, or you go to jail. Shoot that, shoot him, shoot. Certain rules just can't. You can put your finger on the trigger, take aim, but don't pull it. Don't pull it. Instead, pull the trigger on joy. Joy in this very moment can crush the madness. A sweet melody. Breathe. Make some noise. Come on, make some noise. There you go. Noise can crush the madness. Yes. Plurality, triality, and all the other alities spin together to create a new reality. Deep breathe. Breathe deep. Let the breath spread to all your points of bliss and kiss the possibilities. You can crush the madness. Get it under your thumb, under your heel, under the sledgehammer of forgiveness. And erotica, erotica, tied to every thought, can crush the madness. Stop it in its tracks, make crumbs of it, subdue it like a wild horse, and crush it while it whimpers and weeps, making noises that might make you want to let it be, but don't. Dig deep. Feel the power in your hands. Come back to breathing and crush the madness. It's what all worthless beings are trying to do. Yeah, crush the madness and run home with me. We'll crush the madness. All right. Ya está pesado, no? La madness, la locura, mano. I wrote this poem about war as a veteran of battlegrounds and stuff. I felt like this just came to me, and I wrote it down. Children of men, resting in the shade, arms at the ready, study the tree line, wait for movement, study the desert, the sand dunes in the distance. They study the sky. They study the lines of the earth and the lines on the back of their hands. Children of women, rest in the shade, arms at the ready, locked and loaded, study the river's edge, the jungle, the path they are near to, the trees, the forest. They study the lines on the backs of their hands. And no one is grumbling. The air is thick with the pungent smell of fear emanates from them. They wait and watch. A lesson in patience. A lesson in waiting. No time to sleep. Attention in the ether. Like soup too thick to stir. Leaves continue to fall from the trees and do their twirling, spiraling dance to the end of their fall and lie there with all the other fallen leaves. A time of quiet. Soon, a time of release. Humbled now in the face of ineptitude, anger is gone, eyes become vacant, dry, and I am one of them. Children of men, cannon fodder. A glimmer appears in the tree line, a movement, a shining of metal. More time passes. The time to move is now. Safety clicks off. The party is on. Children of men, children of women, fall to the earth, soundlessly bleeding. Yeah. Long live peace, and there be. My prayers are now for world peace. World peace. There's war on every continent of the planet. Unbelievable. So, if you know how to pray, if you believe in prayer, pray for peace. Things to consider as the war against anxiety, boredom, continues. The value of those small things, small thoughts that get us in trouble. Crippling beliefs that tie us forever to ridiculum. Skyscraper puppets of the wealthy, glimmering asphalt in the too wet night. Barefoot, manic, depressificationalism, sidewalk hoarders, dangerous in their undignified poverty. Don't look at me. I'm not the guilty party. I am not guilty. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. And I promise I'll never do it again. Okay. Medicalizationalistic society. Where's my medicine? Freedom to choose what is your medicine. Freedom to choose what is your medicine. Even if others suffer. Quick, real quick, my medicine. Following dealers around dark corners, binding with slender shadows as they percolate resoundingly with the distant traffic. Creative freedom, chained to the drain pipes and promising comfort and affluence. Vanity, ready to kill, steps lightly up the stairs of infinity and pauses at a door on the 100th floor. Things to consider as the war against anxiety, boredom, ignorance continues. Yeah. I've done this poem here before, but I want to do it again because, like Greg talked about, Aztlan, the place where the Mexica left in order to find the eagle on top of the nopal. Okay. Meanwhile, Biafra. Meanwhile, South Africa. Meanwhile, Cuba. Meanwhile, Aztlan. First stanza, South Africa, South America struggle for class equality. She moves to the head of the table, directed by 7 generations' manifest destiny, and stands there in the glow of birthday candles. Sus ojos verde mar ven todo, no se les escapa nada, me ven a mí y me estremezco. Second stanza, England. Who knows? ¿Qué es England? Pues no sé. Meanwhile, el indio equivocaba. Meanwhile, el indio, equivocadamente nombrado indio por Cristóbal Colón, sigue siendo el enemigo del CIA, el FBI y el tío Sam. She sits at the head of the table, now smiling and shy. Third stanza, the world. 3 young thieves slip through a window in the poor side of town. They take with them a black and white color TV, a CD player, and $12.77. No one hears them, no one sees them, and they never get caught for that crime. She looks around at everyone, takes a deep breath, and prepares to blow out the candles. Fourth stanza. A little girl is crying because her mom is lying next to her, dead. Other people are lying next to her. They too are dead. Others mill around and give furtive glances at the camera lens. One woman hides her face in her hands and disappears into the crowd. She now puts both hands on the table beside the 3-layer cake and blows. Her wish disappears into the cosmos. All the candles go out. Happy birthday, America. Think I have time for one more? Yeah. Adaptophilia. Can somebody tell me what that is? I don't even know. I just wrote the word. I love that word, adaptophilia. Picking up the pieces of a broken promise. We only get what we deserve, one curve at a time. And there are so many. It was hello, and now it's goodbye. Adaptophilia. Just a hippie. Can a person be just one thing? A wizard, a thief, a good person, a whore, a songstress? Hard to say. Look this way. For what? There is a leak in time. One drop every Sabbath. The congregation is full of thank yous and amens. The crooked get straight. The wrong go right. What's left is a slow burn of emotions and a traffic jam at the exit. Here is the blood of Christ. Glug, glug, glug. Here is the body of Christ. Glug, 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 glug. I'm in line. It's my turn. It's a drive-through church. Adaptophilia. Doing it anyway. All is forgiven. Thank you so much, George and Kat, for having me here. I feel blessed and honored. So, luz y paz a todos.
Thank you. Perfect. Just so they don't fall, because I could knock them over. Hi, hi. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Trevino, and I'm so grateful if you're tuning in. Carlos Williams said, "It is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there." And in today's news of immigration, it brings me to think about how every immigration story is a love story. And I'm going to read about some love stories having to do with crossing the border. Sometimes, in order to travel, our lines grow in these all directions. As a child, I'd be called to the car at 5 in the morning. We'd load dark suitcases into the silent trunk, bring pillows for the flat road ahead. My brother and I would sleep through dark wheat, endless rows of corn, patches of farm, mid-loam, all this, but I'd only fully wake at the beginning of the desert to start counting the cactus in the fields near the border. Mountains only hours away, cragged above our car, jutting broken layers in the sky, ages of rock sliced at middles wide so we could pass, copper, shimmer sand, apricot black, ancient earths pointing, contradicting, sediment rubbling beneath, and green lifts from black crevices, millennia by millennia below. I would forget my English. Who are the women of Mexico? Who are the women and the children that are leaving? We know it is deadly there. We know it is deadly below there. We know it is dangerous. Here I'm going to read about a woman who I traveled to in Mexico. Who are these people? Tia Licha. You lost 14 babies, kept 6. Held us at the cheeks, grandmother, sister, Tia Licha, landing kiss after kiss, sucking warm pockets through wrinkled lips, right at our ears, near our noses. You told me how you sold empanadas at dawn, 4 kilos each morning for your daughters, their dresses for school, the right dresses. Wake at 3 and start kneading the dough. Boiling la piña, el camote, la leche for filling 96 pastries each morning, 7 breakfasts too, and not one bite for you. On the sidewalk selling every morning, your husband sold you the flour, milk from his store, kept track of his inventory, kept you quiet without running water, and pregnant each year you were married. You took care of Santita, your neighbor, someone else's tia abuela, too sick, too old to cook, a lady just a few blocks away, just a few 100 meters, so hungry too, needed toast and coffee, her juice, un huevito every morning, and su platillo for lunch, la comida, and it was nothing, you say. Pero con la sopa, su aguacate, su tortilla bien caliente, el pollo deshebrado, all of it by the old lady's noon. How you'd walk fast round the corners, never spill a drop of la sopita, el fideo, el caldito. Told me you were 70 when you learned women had los orgasmos. Read this from the book, a medical book about women. Said up to then you thought sex was nothing but una violación. You lean into my son's face, great aunt, tia abuela, close your eyes as you kiss him and all the children. The widow's bump behind your neck, curved, a half a globe on your back. Tia Licha. And now I'm going to read about someone who came. Someone who came. Voice of a man who I imagine put together un chandelier that hangs upside down. It's an art piece by Pepón Osorio, functional metal and glass. He had left it all behind, la esposa, his daughter, el carro, la chamba, all behind, so he could marry this little Americana he met on WhatsApp. He thought it would be his last chance after casi toda la vida jalando, unas pocas viejas, and his best friend Benny dead in the last cat fight. And when he arrived at her house and saw it was not in el barrio, but on a nearly soundless street, he wanted an object to remember every brave thing he had done. a kitchen magnet from when they held hands out in the open at the Tower of Americas. He wondered how far he could see if he had the nerve to go up. He hung an old license plate that started with the letter A over his new wife's bed because they had had sex for 4 hours straight on more than one occasion, and he wanted to remember it was just like driving a car. A for aprendiendo. He kept all the brochures any hotel clerk or street hawker ever gave him. He kept all of the colorful junk mail because it had his name on it, stacked on his dresser in the bedroom because these pages had things he had never seen before. Battery-powered songbirds, upside-down tomato planters, genius. He filled their house with these small objects, his memory shelved on every surface because he had to see what he had done since he could not believe it. Until there was nowhere else to hang the plastic babies they sold at the dollar store. Until his new American wife yelled that there was not one cramped space left in any drawer where he could store the dominoes, the water guns, everything the kids left behind from the neighbor baby's birthday party. Until he saw it at La Pulga for $25 and said, "Ah, el chandelier." And he packed it in the back seat of his carcacha, hung it immediately when they got home. He wanted to see it dazzle. The chandelier held todo lo que le dio la pinche gana, juguetes, mugres, dolls, memorias, every crystal scallop a shining echo for every tiny new gem of his life. Every transparent strand of beads, a hook for any plastic palma or pearl-rimmed bird's nest he could find. Recuerditos, he called them. And he wondered if his daughter, en el otro lado, could see this magical upside-down Christmas tree, if he could hang it from the top of the Tower of Americas. Gracias. I'm going to read two more from my new book, Virgin X. I took a workshop with Natalie Diaz, who taught us to look at the history of the alphabet and each letter. And when I had my opportunity to look up the history of a particular letter, I decided on the letter X, the Latin X, because the Latin X is becoming, or has become, a very important word. And discovering the meaning of X helped me discover why my book is called Virgin X. So this is for Natalie Diaz and her great wisdom. We learn X represents fishbone, removed from head and tail, rib cage meant to swim the full weight of the oldest bodied creatures so they could glide, eat as if in flight. Mysteries of the alphabet shows early glyphs of X as crooked ladder, vertebrae, deprived of muscle, skin, and fur, deprived of face or scales, without teeth, without tongue. X is 10, a number for digits, spot on a map, oblique signature, my grandmother's signature. Her X, a skinned cross turned on its side, lacking the sheath of letters, of cursive, those curves that would allow her to read the full sadness of her name, Dolores. Letters without cilia, providing locomotion to the seas of hurts and light that would come. I did not recognize my name when Mrs. McAdams spoke to me on the first day of kinder. I'd never seen red hair before or freckles on a person and was told no. I was wrong about the way to make the number 2. I'd practiced in Mexico with my father, no starter curl at the top, a no Mobius strip at the bottom, straight like this, she said, and made me erase what my father taught me. The treat of the letter people songs, Mr. M, who boasted in gold how he made all the words of M, words I'd never heard. Munch, maybe macaroni. What if he had sung about mamá, mano, miel, molcajete? My friends say Latinx, conquer nomenclature, replace the A, the oldest drawing of ox, encompass O, earliest signifier of I, O carved into soft stone to say, see this here. We have Malcolm, lady, generation. X must have been the first to equal MC squared, 24th letter. This carving of an eaten rib rack had lived in order to order the direction of organelles and skins taut length, of cuts of bodies we quarter and grill, of gills, of wordless, motherless babies, bodies we cage in cages made of wire X's at the border, of lungs holding them in place, insisting on the melt of soft tissue, on knife bone survival. Thank you. Thank you. Something tragic happened in San Juan, Texas. A lot of people don't know about it, 1970. And this poem is in tribute to that. And it's based absolute true story. At the Basilica of San Juan, of La Virgen de San Juan del Valle. So in tribute to her strength, and I want you to imagine a building that has a spine, as buildings do, and wings. So this is called Between Wings. Your arms stretch under the blue garment, not feathered, not under Guadalupe's drapery of sky, nor below the hot blanket of holy breath. Your stiff garment forms a pair of wings from the apex of your neck. Only your clothing reveals it is you, thin, a spine, a column under that dress. The carver left your eyes open, floated earth's effigy inside your crown to remind us of this weight on your head. It was a retired school teacher who flew the body of an airplane into your shrine that morning, announced he wanted to kill Catholics, Methodists, and Mexicans. The children he taught, crashed between the shrine and the school, between children having lunch and supplicants at prayer. The exploding fuselage lodged at the beam in the silent spine of your winged building did not kill a single person on the ground. A miracle. 1970, San Juan, Texas made international headlines when this retired school teacher smashed his rented airplane into the schoolhouse. So, borders, complications, what to do. I'm going to read, I think, one more, or maybe a couple. I have a series of poems. Series of poems here dedicated to that same Virgin. Our Lady of San Juan del Valle, San Juan de los Lagos, depending on which side of the border you believe in. This is number 2. Miracles of Misericordia. After my divorce, I finally listened to the words in my grandmother's prayer, Madre de Misericordia, and I only heard what my English could unlock. Mother of something, misery. Her back molded into a too soft pillow, her head under an open window. This was her routine after she bathed. Windows open in summer washed her gold strands of hair, curled into upside-down question marks along her neck. Her prayer card filled with blue, Your dress, Virgen, the waxy card of you between her fingers, thin as a threaded needle. I asked her, why do you pray to this Virgen when it was Guadalupe Mexico loved to burn with holy candles, who bloomed roses in midwinter, who I met hanging in every rearview mirror of every bus and taxi I'd ever taken? Porque es muy milagrosa, she said, scolding me, with or without thinking of miracles she'd once wanted. Miracle to end her son's leukemia, to dry out the pneumonia in her husband's lungs, for her own legs to stand again, to hold a broom herself again, and once more sweep dried leaves away, the dust, the dead. 3. Migrating la Virgen. Oh, Lady of San Juan de los Lagos, your eyes do not look down at us half shut. It is your dream, the whole earth you carry above your head, where we do not fight for land, and we do not cross one another or jagged borders with our own travel-sized miracles. Miracle of a bottle of water, miracle of a photograph tucked under a bra, miracle of a sandwich shared, made 3 million times, hundreds of miles away. You want us to swim in the one ocean, el mar, Maria, your populated effigy, great Mother Earth, as the dream, as the dreamer. I've crossed the brown Rio Grande 300 times or more with my green card, then my blue card, while other children crawled across pale deserts, hid under helicopters, bridged the lands in question with their water bottles and work and bones. Madre de Misericordia, Mother of Misery, of Mercy. The difference between these children and me was the color of our papers. We have papers, my father said, papers, though I'd asked him once if he could tell my mom to please dry my back better after my shower so the kids would stop it, stop saying it, because somehow my back stayed wet all day long. You have the same name as my grandmother's, Maria de Socorro, Mother of Mercy. I am still learning the difference between the prayer and the one who prays. Thank you.
Okay, we're going live. 5, 4, 3. Okay, this has been a wonderful day here at Mega Corazón, and we are going to now feature a very special person. If you go on to Google or whitepages.com or yellowpages.com or any of the great spaces where you look for people and you ask for Anthony Flores, you'll probably end up with 30,000 Anthony Floreses. So we're going to feature Anthony, the poet Flores, tonight. And there's only one of those in existence, and here he is.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? Very glad to still be here at Urban-15 for a wonderful first day of National Poetry Month in San Antonio, Texas. Thank you, Urban-15, for hosting this and for doing this several years now and for having me back. I was able to perform earlier for the youth-centered portion of this event, and I got to perform some of my slam and spoken word pieces for the youngsters. And now I'm going to get to do something that I rarely get to do, and that is read other stuff that I normally do not get to perform. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. It wasn't too long ago that San Antonio was named only the second city in North America to by UNESCO to be designated as a culinary creative city of gastronomy, actually. And I think it's going to be wonderful for the city, for the creatives who are working in the culinary industry. And since we poets have been working in food and writing about food for thousands of years probably, I'm going to read you all some poems about tacos. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. This is based on a memory. I work with a bunch of kids throughout the city, have been doing so for about 20 years, and so I write stuff specifically for the youth, and this is one of those poems that I wrote last year for some kids, high school kids that I was working at. It's based on a true story. I don't know how many of y'all remember, but back when I was a kid, it wasn't cool to take tacos for lunch to school, and no matter how awesome they are right now. So this poem is dedicated to everybody who was taco before being taco was cool. I remember it well. It was a day of shame, and I did not yet respect my own family name, a feeling I usually choose to conceal in the dark. An elementary school field trip to the zoo with lunch for us kids at Brackenridge Park. I had asked my dad for roast beef or cooked ham, and I think I remember he tried. He forgot because he was so tired, so my mom packed me a couple of refried bean tacos that morning, and I sat at the table and cried. They never really fully listened. It was just something they did. They were hard-working adults after all, and I was only a kid. I had been looking forward to the lions, the tigers, and bears, but I don't recall any fierce animals that day, only the fear of the future wild beasts of icy cold stares. He brought tacos. I could hear the laughter. I could see the finger pointing like I was the new little brown clown everyone was anointing. I had been looking forward to the snakes and the birds, but the poet had not yet been born, and so I couldn't find any comforting words. All that morning, as clear as a 1975 TV commercial, I knew that the sight of my slight lunch would be so controversial, felt it deep in my 8-year-old young gut, right down to the final unedited letter. He brought tacos. Can't his parents afford anything better? I remember I made some kind of crazy excuse to my 2 or 3 good friends, found my own picnic table and sat there all alone on its splintery ends. Everyone else feasted on sandwiches supreme straight out of the all-American dream, filled with roasted turkey, roast beef, cooked ham, and individually packaged slices of processed cheese. while I nibbled away in a corner in a silence that brought my tender heart down upon its knees. I don't remember anything that was said, and it could all just be a story my spirit is trying to tell my head, but still, I wish I could go back and tell my dad, thank you for every little thing we always had. Wish I could tell my mom she always handled everything with queenly aplomb. I especially wish I could whisper into the ear of that kid and say thank you for all the tough things you did. Keep reading, stay in school, and don't worry about anything. You were just taco before being taco was cool. Thank you all very much. All right. This is not a dirty poem. I prefer to consider it creatively erotic. But again, it was just a way to get kids to write, older kids, young high school kids, and college kids, and just learn to have fun and play around with language. This is a taco pickup artist. I am a taco pickup artist. When I meet a beautiful taco at a bar, I might walk up to it and say something like, your body is the most gorgeous half moon of a smile. Shh, don't say anything. Let me just look at you for a while. I might say something like, if I could rearrange the alphabet, baby, pues I wouldn't. Because there is no I or you in taco. Plus, a whole bunch of our ancestors put a lot of time and effort into putting all the letters into the perfect order, and I sort of like it that way. By the way, are you here with anyone? Because if you are, that vato is crazy, loco to the bone for leaving you sitting there on that plate all alone. He should not have let such a tasty morsel as you roam, because I'm about to take you home. I think I have a piece of foil and a brown paper bag in my backpack. I might not be the most famous poet in the world, but let me just tell you, I want to close my eyes and slowly spread the fluffy white flour tortilla wings of your thighs and just smell you. I am a taco pickup artist, and some nights I strike so true with my philosophical rhymes that I go home with 2, 3, even 4 tacos at a time, of all kinds. I call that a menage a taco. Orale. I see that you're wearing semi-translucent onions, sexy cilantro, and delicate drops of freshly squeezed lime juice, and that you have yet to be properly kissed, and I simply cannot resist a taco with everything on it. So as soon as I'm able, I'm going to reach over and grab that white napkin off of that table and write you a Chicano sonnet. I really don't know where this power of words comes from, but to use it simply gives me a rush. Plus, I love it when a taco as beautiful as you lowers its eyes, giggles nervously, and begins to deliciously blush. And I don't know exactly who it was that sprinkled you with pickled radishes and squirted you with garlic aioli and raspberry sauce. But I can help you decolonize yourself, dear taco, and reflower you back to the basics of a tortilla, some of your carne, and plenty of my chile. Thank you. A couple of shorter, simple ones. Again, based on a true story, every time people order tacos. This is a taco love song. After I finally located my 2 lengua guisada tacos near the bottom of the brown paper bag, All of the other tacos lay sprawled across the table like beating hearts wrapped in loose foil, waiting for the true loves of their lives. Thank you very much. A very simple one. This one you can put in a stocking for your friends in Christmas. This is a taco Christmas story. One of the wise men arrived with gold on the most holy of nights. Another came with myrrh, and a third man brought frankincense. But the wisest of the wise men arrived early the following morning with tacos. Thank you. All right. I think I'm going to finish off with this one. Are we good on time and everything? 10 more minutes. Okay, I'll do 2 then. What was that other one I was going to do? Oh. I read this one for the kids earlier. They liked it, so let's see what happens. I was able to perform at the inaugural big taco music fest last year, and I was one of 3 poets who got to share the stage with a whole bunch of bands, over 30 bands, at a big music festival. So it was fun. It was great, and this is a taco poem. As long as it's tender pero not too aguada, I will probably order the tacos de carne guisada. There are mornings when I will pray on my hands and knees for bean and cheese and actually weep as I beg for dos, the bacon and egg. When I was a kid, all my dad would ever get us was papas con huevo until we finally protested, por favor, jefe, queremos algo nuevo. Sometimes it's los chiquitos de las taco trucks que yo canto, looking so holy they seem like they were dropped like flowers from the Virgen de Guadalupe's Santo Manto, sprinkled on top with onions, limón y un poquito de cilantro. And I still get confused when they make me choose between al pastor and carne asada. Les quiero decir, give me both o no me den nada. Es muy sencillo. I'll do picadillo if I have to, it's fine. But unlike my tío, I don't want any little pieces of potato in mine. In honor of my grandmother's favorite y por todo lo que hizo, sometimes I will order tacos de frijoles con chorizo. At times, what I most want is to find a little hole-in-the-wall restaurant with tacos de chicharrones con chile tan picosos que te hacen llorar y sudar, even though they're so deliciosos. Once a year, my vegetarian friends, who instead of meat would rather eat flowers and tree bark and even zacate, convinced me to try a taco made of fresh tomate con aguacate. For truly special occasions, just like Mick Jagger, I have a feathery pink boa that I use to wipe my cheeks as the grease drips down my face when I bite into my tacos de barbacoa. And I don't mean to cause any controversial chispas with these poetic pipas, but I love a handmade flour tortilla filled with curly, crispy tripas. I didn't know this as a child, but I know it now. They are definitely the smelly but super tasty entrails of a cow. There's nothing that really rhymes with lengua, but I have no problem in saying, as this story is sung, I will walk into any congalito or nogalitos and say, come on, people, just give me some tongue. This is Taco City, USA way, and you'll find good ones in every direction away. Tacos, tacos, all kinds of tacos, the list never ends. But the best tacos of all are the ones that you share with familia and friends. Thank you all very much. One final taco, and then I'm going to go eat some tacos. Because I've been here all day with you awesome folks at Mega Corazón, URBAN-15. Thank you guys for getting National Poetry Month in San Antonio off to an excellent start. And You guys do a great job. This is from the Taco Music Fest and some other taco events. Here you go. Mother's Day is coming up. This is for your mama. I know that doesn't sound cool, but it's for your mama. I think it's May 12th, Mother's Day, next month. Bring your mama some tacos this Mother's Day. Bring your mama flowers and some tacos this Mother's Day. Bring her chocolates and pan dulce and tacos. A pretty dress, a beautiful poem, her favorite cake from H-E-B, and tacos. I'm sure she would appreciate the Olive Garden or the Mexican Manhattan or M.K. Davis or Luby's or Mi Tierra or Las Palapas, but save that for lunch or dinner. In the morning, keep it simple and just show up with tacos. Surprise her with a taco of remembrance, a taco of contrition, a taco that says, I remember all the good things you have ever done for me. A taco that says, I am sorry for all of the times I have been an asshole mom. A taco that says, forgive me for not being a casual talker, I never will be, but an eloquent love letter to the spirit you are exists in the great expanses of my silence. You are the wonderful sound that the words of my poetry look up to with great fascination in their eyes. Llévale flores a tu mamá, llévale chocolates, perfumes, pasteles, poemas, llévale un vestido bonito y zapatos nuevos, pero que no se te olviden los tacos. Keep it simple. Show up with a bouquet of fragrant tacos that join the mariachi of your heart in serenading her with las mañanitas in the sweet Sunday sunlight, even if you can't sing. Estas son las mañanitas que cantaba el rey David. A las mujeres bonitas se las cantaba así. Despierta, madrecita, mira que ya amaneció, ya los pajaritos cantan, la luna ya se metió. Surprise her with a taco that says the only way a kid like you could ever grow up to be a man or a woman like you is because of a mother like her. And for those of you who are missing your mothers because they are in another city, another state, another country, another realm, just remember that when we, as the city of San Antonio, when we, as a community, say tacos to go, we mean to go everywhere. Thank you very much. I'm Anthony the Poet. That's my time.
There's only one, Anthony the Poet Flores. There's only one in the world. Yeah, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful time. Now we're going to close the evening with one of our favorite performers, Vocab, who is a poet, a musician, a singer. She brings so much soul to Mega Corazón. She has done every one since we began, and in fact, was one of the first poets URBAN-15 ever worked with our open mic series. So let's say special thanks again, San Antonio Area Foundation, City of San Antonio, the Film Commission of San Antonio, and we want to make sure the Texas Commission of the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts get in there as well. Friends of URBAN-15, our Artistic Director, Catherine Cisneros, our Events Coordinator, Fabiola Torralba, our wonderful technical crew, geniuses in making Mega Corazón happen, John Anderson and Homer Villarreal, and our research director, who's not here at the moment, Marisol Cortez. So we want to thank them and the board of directors, and let's go ahead now, enjoy Vocab.
Greetings and salutations. I am Andrea Vocab Sanderson.
I'm Nick Blevins.
And we're members of the Foreign Arm, as our t-shirts say, which you can get off of our website, theforeignarm.com. Shameless plug. Let's do some songs and some poetry, shall we?
Sounds good.
This first piece is called Ask the River. I once asked the water, do you recognize me? My whole body a river, frame that flows and ripples deep within, coursing to currents of beauty, liquid hearth, gurgling with inseparable droplets and always inviting. My entire habitat encompassing, salted and fresh, full and rushing with life through valleys and mountains. I wind. My entire habitat encompassing, never dammed or receding, and certainly never stagnant. My movement a fluid feminine rhythm trickling or hasty. I flow, I flow. I am no pond, yet at times I resemble an ocean. I once asked the water, do you recognize me? I sat still, waited for an answer. All I saw was my reflection in the flux and waves, in the flux and waves. I spoke to the river, I had so much to say, and I talked to the river. She answered me in ways, in ways, in ways. She answered me in my reflection. You know, I am a San Antonio native, and if you are joining us, I like to try to give you my perspective of our city. There is a city full of life and vibrancy here, of diversity, and there's a river that runs through our city that we kind of have built everything around: our missions, our love for each other, and our love for our Spurs. I did not prepare a Spurs poem today, but, you know, shout out to them as I proceed forward. One of the loves of my life is poetry and God, and to me, God is poetry, because it says, if you read the Bible, that everything he created through his words. And so this is my spin on the gift he gave. It's taken from the text of Philippians 1:6, but it's called According to.
according to you, according to you.
Poetry. God's work in human hands. May we be worthy of the pen we hold, submissive as a sacrificial lamb. Call it Holy Communion, bold as the ink drops. The culture pops effervescently by motto and creed. The blood never recedes, only goes silent momentarily. In the interim, when the time comes, please supply us with everything we need. Quail the intrigue for the allure of the flesh. Grant us the anointing to bless. Let your light emanate through our skin to manifest. May molars and incisors chew on the fat of you and digest this truth, succulent and satisfying as stewed meat or anything covered in gravy. I am covered in clay, Lord, and loving the way that you made me. Through the living word you persuade me, woo me, prove yourself to be my sufficiency. This beauty is all consuming. My quill is trembling like feathers in the breeze. My mind can't keep with this delicate writing my hand is scribing. I do believe that my heart has known and always shown what the divine has given and has shone upon us like the dawn. Saffron and marigold, scarlet and yellow, ambers and halo, your love flows like a river into my palm, saturates these psalms in the still and quiet hours when it's calm and I am asleep. You creep into my heart song. You sneak into my conversations with elders. You slip into my steeping tea. You snuggle your way into our intimacy with like-minded human beings. You serenade me with wisdom that you've stored up for such a time as this. You bid me to speak your words and forbid me to remain silent. So how could I resist? You've entrusted me with your parchment in hand, because through me you know you can complete the work. For he who has begun a good work in you will carry it through. According to you. Poetry. This is my truth, according to poetry. Yeah. We're going to slightly switch gears. There's still going to be poetry involved in this next piece, but we're going to hear more of the beautiful Nicholas Blevins sing to you guys. This song is called Holding On, and it is on our forthcoming project called The Reach. Will you keep holding on for me? For me, I just keep holding on. Baby, will you keep holding on for me? For me, I just keep holding on.
I don't know how you feel, but when you come around, these feelings get real. So maybe
I stand
a chance to figure you out. Oh, to partial glances is a Sisyphean, and so life keeps holding my advances.
I'm keeping the hope that we could be complete.
Maybe, baby, we can figure this out. Baby, I keep holding on. Ooh. Baby, I keep holding on. Baby, I keep holding on. Ooh, baby, I keep holding on.
Will you keep holding on for me? For me, I'll just keep holding on. But baby, will you keep holding on for me? For me, I'll just keep holding on. Bottled grains turn bottom up. Time may wilt away, our love remains uncorrupt. Faith pulled from the slump, sleep sheltered beneath my skin. I wish to usher you into this space I've been harboring. I'm mooring this floating hope, honey. Come ashore to me. Restless seas may try to pull you out with tides, but I'm waiting patiently, voraciously scrolling your signals, reading your eyes for any vacancy to fulfill our love. Hang scaling in the balance, I'm keeping my petals peeled. A bouquet of belief budding in my palmed hand, because love is a fragrant connection, woman to man. And
baby, I keep holding on. Ooh, baby, I keep holding on.
Yeah,
baby, I keep holding on. Ooh, baby, I keep holding on.
will you keep holding on for me? For me, I just keep holding on. Baby, will you keep holding on for me? For me, I just keep holding on. Yeah. Yay. So we got just a couple of things left to do. We're going to change up the energy on this next piece. It's about haters. So I think I have to clear my throat before I go into this piece. It's called Jade Eyes. It's about jealousy and haters. All that little stuff pushed to the side. Jade stole my range, left his on my window pane, reflecting green flecks of disrespect in her eyes. Yeah, Jade stole my fame, left me with nothing save my name, dissecting my pride with emerald knives in her eyes. I didn't suspect she was a bone collector. She'll chip and chisel if you let her. The poison ivy screaming in her smile. I didn't predict she'd be a vicious pretender. She'll hiss and she'll hate till you surrender. The fruit of deception is ripening on her vines. Jade eyes, epidemic of envy. Jade eyes, everything she wants to be.
Everything she wants to be.
Jade eyes, ooh, she ain't a friend of me. She just my enemy. Jade eyes, she jealous of me. I got this ill feel of malcontent and ill will. I keep my eyes peeled, she look at me with steel grill. Mean mugged eyes look like she can take my man. When she resolve her plan, blow toxins out her diaphragm. It's like she got a diagram of color-coded plots. She playing target practice where I stand amongst the spot. She wanna stop my shot and have her life replaced with mine. But envious is crime, and girl, you must
be out your mind.
She think my life's sublime, is curious and not aligned. Sleep up and just one time I see the dagger at my mind. I'm dodging green blades, no acid rain on my parade. I see you playing Jade, you're faking this all a charade. You're faking this all a charade. You're faking this all a charade, yeah. Jade eyes, epidemic of envy. Jade eyes, everything she wants to be.
Everything she wants to be.
Jade eyes.
Ooh, she ain't a friend of me.
She's just my enemy.
Jade eyes.
She's jealous of me. Ooh. JJ took everything, yeah. Jealous heifer.
Thank you so much for visiting today with the 2019 Mega Corazon. We had 18 poets, 23 acts, 7 hours of continuous, heartfelt poetry from San Antonio, Texas, URBAN-15's studios. April 6th, yes, 2020 is the next Mega Corazon, and we look forward to your comments, your suggestions, and perhaps even your appearance at that Mega Corazon. And just stay in touch with us, events at urban15.org. My name is George Cisneros, and I want to thank everybody who participated in this show. Be yourself, and that is Mega Corazon. Thank you.